This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, councillors, and welcome to all the members of the public in the gallery. I declare this meeting open at 5:30 p.m. The ordinary council meeting is being live streamed via Zoom, and you will note there are two councillors attending via Zoom, and also Matthew Webb, acting corporate services director, is attending via Zoom. Recordings of council meetings or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused or transmitted without prior written consent of the General Manager. The meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on the Council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory comments or statements. Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gundungurra and Darug people, and respects the history and culture of the elders, both past and present. And I'll call on Pastor Joe to say the prayer.
Pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your goodness to us. Father, we first want to thank you for this beautiful community that we get to call home. Father, I pray for all of our councillors and our council staff and ask your blessing on each and every one of them. And as we meet this evening, Father, we ask for your guidance and your direction and your wisdom. And Father, we just ask your continued protection and blessing over our community. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. If there are no issues with leave of absence for this meeting, are there any declarations of interest?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just wanting some clarification, if I could, in relation to declarations of interest in relation to 1409. 1409, the guidelines for additional state special variation process.
That is notice for information only at the moment.
Right. Okay.
There is no attempt to make decisions on that at this stage.
Okay, I realise that, but I just foreshadow that maybe when and if a decision is going to be made in that area, we may require some guidance from the General Manager as to, in particular, in light of a training session we had where, in particular, I was told in respect to one issue, maybe I did have a pecuniary interest, whereas I certainly didn't think I did. And it could be a material factor.
I think there are certain things that councillors have to deliberate on, which you have to accept that they're, if you live in the LGA, you'll be highly likely to be paying rates. And if we have to deliberate on that, that is simply the way it goes.
The advice was, yeah, the advice may go along the lines of sometimes because of the amount of rates paid, and as to whether you fall into one of the top bands of rate payers, that you therefore may consider it to be one of, that's some advice I received.
We'll seek advice.
We'll seek advice from that later. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No declarations of interest. We had one presentation, that's from Chris Milne, who's the Central West Project Manager, managing the Oberon Community Hub site.
This presentation is included in the business papers, so it's all right. I'll just take a quick journey through it. Thanks. And this is really an April update on the community hub. Since our last meeting, sorry, we were asked to review and confirm the costings that have been proposed, the cost savings that have been proposed. And this explains a little bit about the what's been going on during the April period. Thanks, Sharon. Why are we here? So on the 15th of December 22, Council authorised the community hub to be developed around option 1A from the business papers, from the business case and the concept design. And that's the project that we've actually moved forward on. In essence, we haven't changed the design. There have been a couple of minor changes along the way, which have been taken back to council at each stage. This was voted and carried unanimously, and all the matters since have been carried unanimously. And the site approved is the one on the corner of Darden's Living Street. Thanks, Sharon. So this paper, the document that's on the screen at the moment, was made available to the public following that council meeting. It generally shows the layout of the drawing of the building, I beg your pardon, and the location of the building, and was open to any comments from the community. Thank you. The actions during March and April, we exclusively engaged with BARPA following the tender process. They were the preferred tenderer. At that time, we also asked for the two lowest tenderers, if you like, to actually provide opportunities for savings. BARPA came back with a substantial list of savings and a good amount of savings, which were discussed at the last council meeting. And we exclusively engaged with BARPA for a period of 1 month to review that value managed tender. A number of the designers who had been involved in the project were engaged to confirm the design, review the proposals, and also get some confirmation from subcontractors and suppliers. And we also discussed the changes, the proposed changes with council's project team, and they've been generally accepted. We also looked at an option to develop some staging options to reduce the cost impact at this stage, and we'll touch on those in a few minutes. So this is all based on the approved design 1A. So if we're ever talking about a design approved or otherwise, it is actually the approved design 1A. So that's how we move forward. Thank you. So some of the key cost considerations were to resolve the underpinning requirements around the Robert Hooper Centre, where the connection of the building, the two buildings actually happen. Review the finishes in the kitchen, particularly given the nature of the kitchen, that it is really a reheat kitchen and serving light meals, not cooking, anything like that. We also looked at some of the internal architectural finishes, which were very high class at the time and perhaps not necessary in this environment. And given our cost constraints, we looked to rationalise those without changing the function of the building. We also rationalised the mechanical system and the electrical fittings particularly. We've excluded works from the Robert Hooper Centre and looked at that upon a staging situation so that that can be brought online without cost penalty in the future. We will make some allowances for sewer connection to that building now whilst we've got the ground up. And also a review of the external facade elements, most particularly the roof. Thanks. During the month, we also had a discussion with the library manager, Julie Baker, and the State Library, where we reviewed the design with the State Library representatives. They've subsequently come back to us and given us some feedback. Probably the key things here are that the library is a vibrant community gathering spaces with a range of uses. It's not just about sitting in a quiet, dusty corner reading books these days. It's about getting people into the building, and I think their words were serendipitous activities, so that people actually had relationships with the library without really knowing that they were going to have a relationship with the library. They were very positive to in their feedback with the design. They thought it appropriate. They also highlighted that our existing library isn't big enough for the nature and size of this community, and they were very accommodating. We've also offered to continue that relationship and support and provide feedback on a regular basis. And they were very encouraged to do so, and encouraged us to do that exactly that. Those have all been available, so I don't propose to go through all of those sections. We might just go through that. Other than to perhaps look at the floor areas, and from that we can see that the floor area is substantially greater than the existing library. And really the library has the function of the nominated library space, the active entrance and corridors, the meeting rooms and the function spaces. So really it's giving multi-purposing a number of areas within the library and giving us a really good space to work with. Further feedback from Julie and discussions about what the limitations of the library at the moment have really highlighted. There are a lot of activities that can't be undertaken in the library at the moment. Even that said, she's doing a great job there, and so we're getting great benefit from it, but there are opportunities for greater use. Thanks. And that's probably yeah. So what we also did was to look at the plan, the approved plan, but also at some staging opportunities. So that's the approved plan as per the original design 1A, plus a couple of changes. Most predominantly, we removed the ramp between the Robert Hooper building and the main building. And this was primarily due to an equity of access issue and the amount of space that the ramp was occupying within the building. And given our limited budget, we wanted to maximise the delivery of active and functional space rather than having ramps. So that now complies with the DDA requirements, which was certainly something that we had to do. There's no staging involved in this. The basic plan is maintained. We talked about previously some of the actions that we took to look at some cost savings, particularly around internal finishes and the roof, and reduce the scope of the Robert Hooper building. So it's proposed that the Robert Hooper building will have approval to do that work, but won't undertake that work at the moment. And the Robert Hooper building will, for all intents and purposes, stay as it is at the moment. Thanks. We also had a look at the design goals review, and this was really to go back and counter check against the brief to make sure that we were actually still designing the same thing we set out to design at the beginning of the department. And we looked at the brief, and that really highlighted those dot points, which was to upgrade the facilities, improve usability, improve the building energy efficiencies, compliant for accessibility and amenity, provide flexible multi-purpose areas, particularly in the meeting room and the function space, improve the catering facilities, improve technology, provide a facility that caters for the growing population, given that this facility will be here for a long time, and targeted facility for younger generations. Thanks, Sharon. So, as I said, we actually had a look at a staged approach to the building to see whether we could get the cost at the moment down to more towards the budget. So we investigated 3 options. Thanks. So what we maintained was those activities: the library, the community technology centre, business centre, youth space, kitchen, storage, amenities, foyer and meeting rooms, but identified that the function room, which is located within the existing library, could potentially be left behind. And that just further develops that. And most particularly, we also looked at the connection with the town, and that there is a natural connection through Cook Park and Tully's Lane to the main street. So the opportunity to bring the library into the main community, and also given that it's a link through to the sporting precinct as well. So there's a natural sort of flow from the main street through. So we looked at, thanks. We looked at a couple of options here. One of them was to move the building 3 metres away from the Robert Hooper building. Excuse me. That certainly simplified the roof. It rationalised I'll call them the back of house areas, the meeting rooms and so on. And otherwise it left the building the same. Thanks, mate. Option 2B was actually not to increase the size of the existing library building, but maintain it in its existing form. whilst we did add plant and the kitchen to that, and there was some storage added to that, but it meant that we weren't extending that space up the top of the page there. Thanks, Sharon. And then the last option was to actually remove the function centre from the scope, demolish the existing library building. We needed to demolish the existing library building because if we left it there and it was functional, then we would have to bring it up to today's standards, given the planning requirements and the National Construction Code. We would have done the design for that, and that would have been a further stage for another day. We actually went, excuse me, went through the pricing of that, particularly option 2C, and there was a minimal saving at the end of the day because of the, we were really demolishing free space in a lot of ways. It was very empty space. It didn't cost a lot to bring up to speed when you're putting mechanical and electrical fittings in there, but it didn't pay off at the standard square metre rate. That we wouldn't recommend, particularly given the cost to add it on another day. So if we can go past that. So the proposed way forward is confirm the funding approved for the approved design, confirm the award of contract to BARPA, and I highlight that each step of the way we have considered the state government and local government procurement guidelines and followed those. So we are actually in a position that we could engage BARPA straight away. As that happens, we would relocate the library services. There's a process of finalising the design and procurement that the contractor would take part in, and then commence the works on site. We did look at the other option of 2C, but I don't propose that we discuss that at this moment, but there is a methodology to take that forward if desired. Thanks, mate. Just to update the program, if we negotiate with the preferred tender during March and April, which is really where we're at the moment, present the recommendation for engagement of the contractor to this meeting. Here we are tonight. The design and the construction of the hub will commence in May, given that there's some off-site work for about 6 to 8 weeks. We would also, subject to the design, need to potentially look at a modification to the DA, and the library would be available early in 2023. Thanks. This diagram, really, we've been following this along the way through the course of the project. The first 2 sections are complete. The last line of green and orange, we're really in that last orange phase to the bottom of the page, and then we go into the delivery phase, hopefully following tonight's meeting. I'd like to highlight that if we don't take it forward, you won't get to build this building cheaper than right now. If we don't go forward, the price will go up. We've engaged with the contractor for a month or so now. They have offered their best price on the table, so it would be very difficult to keep the pricing as we've got it at the moment. The industry is starting to move from a costing point of view again. So I'd have to say that tonight is the opportunity to improve this building to move forward. Thank you.
Councillor, any questions?
Thank you, Chris. You say that tonight will be the last opportunity to approve this project.
I say that from the context of the cost. And obviously, council can decide what they decide.
That's my point. It's
Yes.
up to us, not up
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
you. But also, council will still have some opportunity to look at other options to bring this in under the budget without going over a $1.5 million expenditure. So I think that's a little misleading to say that that's the only opportunity we have. But thank you for clarifying that. Has your company done similar projects of these before in the Central Western area?
Similar projects in that regard.
In regards to a library upgrade?
We have at Scott School.
None for local government areas?
Not for local government. No.
Some of the local government areas are near neighbours, similar sizes, and that to us, Cara, Gilgandra, Lady, Cabon, Darramore, etc. I'm not aware that they incorporate any function facilities in their libraries at this stage. And, I think the easiest way to remove costs and bring things back in line to a reasonable budget limit would be remove some of the larger areas. The first one would be the functioning. That's just one opinion. Thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
We did look at the function area and removing the function area, and that was option 2C, which was in the presentation.
It's in the presentation. It's not in this one.
And it's, they were in the papers that were put forward, and I believe it was sent out earlier in the week. So that said, we have had a look at that, and the budget, the difference in the cost was approximately $200,000. So we have actually got pricing on that particular opportunity. The other thing I would say is that we've responded to the project brief as we were asked to do, and the project brief included those areas. So we're just responding to council's requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for council's consideration, option 2C is on page 70 of the business paper.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, it's not 2B. That's not good.
Yeah, 2B is not. No.
Sorry,
It's an interim process.
Yeah.
Really.
Sorry, my mistake.
Thank you.
But through the chair, council's right. 2B was not. It's just 2C with the removal of the functions.
Yeah.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wanting some clarification. I must admit I couldn't read the finishes on page 16 of the attachment. I know that there are certain amounts confidential, but during that there was some adjustment to the finishes as a result of current negotiations with BARPA. Could you comment, Chris, just on what that involved to the extent you can, without being, obviously, we're not talking about particular costings for those. I think one of them was the removal of the stainless steel bench top and some other trim issues. I just wanted to understand what that was going to do to the aesthetics and the actual practicality of the building.
Thanks for that question, Councillor McKibben. The primary review was externally was done on the roof.
Yes.
And the difficulty, particularly of tying in the Robert Hooper building with this building. However, there is a methodology there, and we have modified the line of the roof particularly. It still considers all the issues we've discussed before with regard to snow loads and so forth.
Yes.
However, it does simplify. It does take away some of the windows in the high level windows, and they've been replaced with some skylights and so on. A lot of the other internal finishes were primarily nuancing, I guess. Some of the things particularly were around vinyl. There was a dado line in the room, particularly robust finishes in some of the other spaces.
I can give you a list of those if you want to look at it.
If you want to tell me the page, Andrew.
Sorry, it's in confidential, but not referring to figures.
Look,
we're only referring to.
Yeah, sure. They're those sorts of things. Are they materially different? They were selected because they didn't change the function of the building.
Right.
There will be some that we would, subject to being able to release some of the contingency as we're out of the ground and past some of the milestones in the project that really, where we can address risk more proactively, I guess. We would probably recommend that some of those be reinstated, and most particularly, I guess, that's the tiling in some of the wet areas, amenity areas, because that would certainly reduce ongoing costs. With that said, they could be put in a different day, but we will actually take some net variation positions into that so that we can actually accurately forecast those costs now and into the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions? I have one, Chris.
Yes.
In a previous presentation, I heard you use the term guaranteed maximum price.
Yes.
Is that the figure that is the 3895?
The 3895 is for option 1A, the approved option. That would be a lump sum design and construct. We proposed the guaranteed maximum price based on the option 2C, which would have given us some flexibility to actually finalise the design, given that that was only based on sketches. The concept of a lump sum price, if you like, is a guaranteed maximum price. It's taken up, the considerations of risk and procurement risk and time and so forth. But it's a lump sum design and construct price is what we're proposing.
Thank you. Any other questions? One more.
Just on that lump sum, I'm assuming that what you're saying in relation to the lump sum is that from the thorough investigations that have been undertaken on this project to date, it is unlikely that there'll be any unforeseen circumstances that will lead to contract change proposals that could escalate the price above that sum.
Andrew, that's in a perfect world, you're absolutely right. We have done a lot of due diligence. We have gone through this with the contractor. We do feel very confident about it. We do have a $200,000 contingency, which will deal with some of those unknowns and so on.
It's small on a project of this size.
I would agree, but we're reasonably comfortable with it.
Okay,
So I'll rephrase that. We're reasonably comfortable with the full stop.
Right. Okay. So because of the thorough investigations, you believe it's absolutely reasonable that the opportunity for contract change proposals from the contractor for unforeseen circumstances is minimal.
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
Any more questions from within the chamber? What about Councillor Watt or Councillor Tucker? You got anything?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Watt?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Chris? The public gallery is open to members of the community in accordance with the requirements under the current public health order. Any questions from the public will be able to be asked in person. The community is to be given an opportunity to ask questions at the commencement of the council meeting, and the mayor is to ask for questions from the gallery prior to the commencement of the ordinary meeting. Members of the public wishing to address council are permitted to do so, provided the following guidelines are adhered to. The person asking the question at the council meeting must clearly state their name and in what capacity they are acting. If the person asking a question is acting on another person or organisation agent, they must advise council if they have their prior consent and authority. Questions from the public is not an opportunity for debate with elected representatives or staff. There's an opportunity for the community to ask a question in relation to an issue or put a point of view relating to an issue that may be causing interest or concern. Due to time constraints, a time frame of 3 minutes per speaker is allocated. All questions and comments must be directed through the mayor, and in the instance of a question, if it cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and a response given within a reasonable time. This is the only opportunity for a community member to address the council during an ordinary meeting. Now, I note this is the biggest gallery we've had for some time, and I suspect there are a number of people who wish to ask questions. So in order to bring some organisation to the questions, I would ask now, can you put your hand up if you intend to ask a question or provide an opinion? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And can you give me a for the hub or against the hub? For the hub, 2, 3, and against 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, we will now start the questions, and I'll start with one member speaking for the hub.
Hello everyone, my name is Annabelle Burgess and I am the Youth Mayor of Oberon, and I lead the Oberon Youth Council. I am here on behalf of the youth of Oberon to explain the contribution the Community Hub would make to our youth council and all young people in Oberon. Firstly, our youth council often struggles to find spaces where we deliver our events, and the venues we are given permission to use are often in high demand and therefore become scarce. For example, we could use the hub for the How to Adult workshops, which we run annually, where in previous years we've had to move around a bit. In discussion with the high school, there has also been interests for bands and art clubs for older kids who haven't been given the opportunity to facilitate this, and the hub could be the vehicle for these teenagers to do so. I'd also like to comment on the many uses the hub would provide to young people in general. As the youth space within the hub is exclusive to a certain age group, the youth of Oberon will be attracted to the hub for independent study groups, a hangout spot, playing video games, etc. Depending on the hub's trading hours, the youth could use this into the early night, especially since a number of children don't get home until at least after 4 o'clock. I also have with me a letter of support from the Oberon Health Council, of which I'm also a committee member, which highlights how this simple space would contribute to the health and well-being of young people and how they also believe it would provide a benefit to youth council. Though obviously the hub is inclusive of all community members, we have supported the youth space within since the beginning of the hub's development. And that's really all from me. Thank you for listening. And I hope I've provided you all with an alternative perspective for the many potential uses of the hub to Oberon's youth and how it contributes to the town as a whole. Mr. Mayor, would you like my letter of support from the Oberon?
Yes, please. Can you hand back to the General Manager, please? Thank you very much, Annabelle. And one speaker from the against the hub.
Evening all. I'm Sig Servic and I'm speaking for myself. The hub. It's obtained were 1 at 5 million and 2 rumored at 7 million. That the majority of bids came in 40% above the favored tender should be of great concern. It probably means the tender documents were inadequate or that the real cost is closer to 7 million. $1 million of cost was removed from the low bid without change in the scope, mainly by alterations to internal finishing. It is my view that this is not credible. To take 20% of cost out of the cheapest bid cannot be done without reduction in scope. It is rumored that the deal with BAPA is for a fixed price contract. It is also design and construct. This combo may leave the contractor to design out any of his potential cost overruns. There is no guarantee, it seems here, that the community will get what the councillors are asked to approve. No one would wish to involve council in a contract with built-in legal issues. The business paper does not include an assessment of the obvious option to abandon the project or reduce the scope to $53 million budget. It is clear to most people now that we have both design, site configuration, and cost problems. The allegation that the $3 million grant will be withdrawn and consequences ensue is the oldest trick in the book to persuade reluctant councillors. It can be discounted. Councillors should put a moratorium on this project. The hub design needs to be materially reworked, with the Hooper retained freestanding as is, and a smaller extension made of the existing library building. This could house the Oberon tapestries and give additional floor space, say 150 square meters, which can be achieved within an all-up $3 million budget. The alternative is to just reject the hub altogether. Thank you.
Another speaker on behalf of the hub.
Step forward. My name is Jennifer Capel. I am president of the Oberon University of the Third Age. However, tonight I am speaking as a community member. Mr. Mayor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Let us ponder for a moment the fact that Barraga and Black Springs have impressive community halls, while Oberon, with its much larger population, has a function centre less than half their capacity. The majority of people in our LGA support the original plan for the Community Hub project. The community consultation that has taken place over an extended period of time has demonstrated that there is a groundswell of support for the development. All sectors of the community stand to benefit. Children, adolescents, our local business organisations, various community groups, including Oberon U3A, the arts will all use this new facility. Don't let the loud and persistent voices of the minority influence your view of what is best for Oberon. We need our own space that reflects the vitality and forward-looking nature of our community. How wonderful it would be to hold the Australia Day ceremony in our own comfortable and spacious venue. The Mayor's Women's Day function would have a welcome new look, and a host of other possibilities spring to mind. We could accommodate local and travelling performances such as the Country Halls concerts, exhibitions like the Bald Archies, while also providing a venue for our many organisations that are currently severely short of options for meetings and classes. May I mention that Oberon U3A, which prior to the pandemic boasted more than 200 members and currently has approaching 170 members, offers more than 20 classes per week. We have to limit our class sizes due to the constraints of inadequate venues. I am aware of a number of other organisations that are experiencing similar difficulties, including the Oberon Business and Tourism Association, which boasts more than 100 members. A function centre, as originally proposed, would be a very busy place indeed. The redevelopment of the library precinct is long overdue. The original community hub plans for this part of the project are excellent and will be a huge asset for many sections of the community who stand to benefit from the new space. There has never been a better time to borrow money for infrastructure development. Seize the opportunity. We are impatient for the work to begin. So, my question to Council is, will you show leadership and vision by approving the original plan for the community hub? Thank you. May I deliver my speech to the General Manager?
Yes, please. Another speaker for the plans for the hub.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Hardy de Valheim. I'm speaking on my own behalf and my records are on file. Someone said to me the other day about the hub aka Taj Mahal, you'd have to have utter contempt for the people paying council rates if you decide to build this design at this cost on this site at this time. 2 words indeed. Mayor Bill West from Cowra said, I quote, "We know there have been substantial increases in the cost of construction. And since that time, council and the wider community has been involved in various forms of consultation to progress the plan. With a population more than twice that of Oberon, 12,795 men, women, and children need a hospital. Currently 32 beds and 150 deliveries annually. Cowra wants a new hospital costing around $70 million, just a tad over 10 times what our Taj Mahal costs, and it falls well short of the community needs. Cutting costs and corners to fit a square peg into a round hole is not good enough. A grant of $70.2 million from 2019, a few years ago, providing needed services was approved by New South Wales Health in 2021. Yet, the original funding is not good enough. Cowra does not want to burden future generations. They seek more government funding instead. Oberon, on the other hand, is so desperate, forcing residents to pay for a $1.3 million loan over the next 20 years. Councillors should be ashamed of themselves. I don't want $1 of my rights to fund this atrocity. Having spent nearly $1 million on planning since inception, basics like roads and the sewer treatment plant ought to be of a much higher priority than this. Mayor Bill West has the bull by the horns, while our local councillors are still looking for the horns. Thank you.
Another proponent?
My name is Kathy Sajewicz and I'm speaking for the Hub and for myself. The expansion of the library and the creation of the community hub has for many years been overwhelmingly identified by the community as a priority in recurring community strategic plans. I refer councillors to item 1.2.20 of the current delivery plan. And I quote, "Council will develop a community hub combining the library and community centre into one facility. With serious funding from both state and federal governments and other sources, it's time, councillors." I understand there has been a budget overrun and I'm pleased that councillors are looking at this issue carefully, but I'd like to stress the following. It is incumbent upon council to provide not only physical infrastructure, but also cultural infrastructure, which builds social capital, vital to ensure a strong, resilient and balanced community in our growing town. You often hear the term roads, rates and rubbish as the core function of local government. I would like to add another important category to that scenario. Residents, roads, rates and rubbish would be the mantra. Social and cultural capital builds strong communities, and this proposed space will support that concept for all demographics within ours. In the most recent proposal, several sites were assessed for the location of the hub. It was made abundantly clear by the community that they saw expansion on the current site as being the most accessible and suitable. Once complete, the hub will provide a safe, neutral space for our young people to gather and for our seniors to enjoy a centrally located, easily accessible community technology centre. The incorporation of the Business and Study Centre would allow Oberon to team up with various universities offering external study courses. I refer you to the CSU and other unis' spoken will model. Council has in the past looked at this model, but we've never had the appropriate space before. A space for all community groups. I've heard it said that there are other gathering spaces within the town, but these venues have a different purpose, commercial in nature and subject to management and policy challenges. Our autonomous space will always be under community control. I note concerns in relation to the parking options. I draw councillors' attention to the council-owned car park behind IGA, not 100 metres away, and the proposed pedestrian link between the hub and the main street. There will never be a better time to achieve this project than now, and I look to you as councillors and staff to seek innovative solutions to deliver it. Oberon Council has substantial borrowing capacity, which could be one solution. The funding must be used for this project. It cannot be repurposed. Should the project not go ahead, the funds must be returned in full. Not only would council once again be out of pocket for project planning expenses, but it could affect funding opportunities in the future. Councillors are elected to office to represent the residents. It is sometimes difficult to set aside personal views, but I urge all councillors to do just that and deliver for the people of Oberon. Lead with vision and an eye to the future. The demands of our grandchildren will be different from today's residents.
Thank
We
you,
as a
Mrs.
community
Thank
can
you,
ask no
Mrs.
more
Sedgwick.
of you. Thank you.
We have another speaker against the hub.
Mine's up. I'm Robin Wiseman. There, councillors. I'll speak for myself. I'm in between because I can see the advantage of expanding, but my concern is actually how are we going to furniture this area? Is that in the cost? Are we borrowing money to just get the building done and then we're going to have an empty shell? Where's the money coming from that we're going to furnish it with? That is part of my concern. My other concern is that it means the rates will go up because especially if new furniture's got to be put in as well. You've got to have curtains, I assume, I'm guessing. So I don't know what the plan is, but chairs, tables, and also the fact that they're talking of interest rates rising over the next 12 months and onwards. With the inflation, you know, that's not where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Any more speakers for the hub?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. I'm Fran Charge. I'm Chair of Oberon Arts Council and Chair of Arts Out West. I have support, a letter of support I think has been sent from the Executive Director of Arts Out West. And I'd just like to congratulate the council, the previous council and this current council for the work that you're doing to progress this facility. It's something that is badly needed in our community, and I would like to thank Jen Capel for her words and our Kathy Sadgewich would support all that they've said. So I'll cut mine down a fair bit because there's no point repeating what's already been said. But I think when this project comes to fruition, the community hub will be something that will provide a wonderful asset for Oberon going forward into the future. And I think we're all hung up today on what's happening today. Money's never been cheaper than it is at the moment. And yes, it may go up a little, but surely with what council has such good reserves and has looked after money so well over the last years, that there should be something. And, you know, if you build a facility and you can't afford to do everything, as Robin was saying, that doesn't matter. We've still got, the library currently has tables, chairs and all of that. We don't need to purpose build and put everything brand new in to start, surely. We're not throwing everything out. So even if the facility goes ahead and then you think we can't afford to do this, then let's make do and let's progress what we're doing. Let's look at the big picture. Let's look to Oberon in the future, not today, but you people are tasked with making this an incredible facility that is really, really necessary and very important for Oberon. And I look forward to, we've got the funding. I would hate to think that this funding is to be returned. What happens then when you want to apply for more funding? They're going to go, oh, that Oberon Council, well, they had our money, they didn't use it, they sent it back. Let's not worry about them. I, as Chair of Arts Out West, I go to Blaney, I go to lots of little towns, I go to Cowra, all these places, and they have absolutely incredible facilities. They're no bigger than we are, some of them. So let's not leave Oberon, let's not be left behind. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers? Any other speakers?
My name is Bob Wilson. I'm speaking for myself and for my wife. Presumably, now let me say at the outset, I should be brief. I should be very brief. Presumably, you all received the letter that was sent to all councillors today, and hopefully you've all read it. So I won't bore you or waste any more time by going over it, but the same sentiments recur. Just a matter of interest, yesterday I looked up the Swift Google search and found that it is almost 2 years to the day since Paul Toole awarded the $3 million grant. In fact, it's 2 years and 3 days. It's been a long wait, and I hope you will show tonight that it's been a worthwhile wait. Because today could be a big day for Oberon, but to do so, you all have to show sense of purpose, determination, and vision. And in the light of Mr. Milne's presentation tonight, you do not have time for prevarication. I would remind you that 4 months ago, you were all elected, and not only did you get the votes of the residents, excuse me, you also got their trust and their confidence. And yet you also got the expectation that you would all work together to provide the services which the community thinks it's entitled. You will show tonight by your votes, excuse me, whether that trust and confidence was well placed or misplaced. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers?
Mr. Mayor, can I respond to a couple of things that were said? Is that appropriate or not?
Not really. At this stage, what I'm going to do is call for a mover and a seconder to bring item 1301, which is a community hub design and construction appointment, forward, and we'll deal with that as the first item of decision. Councillor Gibbon and Councillor Trimble. Move and second, so we are now all in favour? Against?
Can't see.
No,
Councillor.
can't see Councillor. All right, so that has passed, and we will now move on to item 1301. Report for decision, and is the community hub design and construction appointment. Recommendation in 6 parts. The council: 1. Confirm design 1A, option 6, as the final design option for the hub redevelopment. 2. Accept the tender submission 2487.15 from BARPA Proprietary Limited to the value of $3,895,440.31. 3. The Mayor and General Manager be authorised to sign contract documents. 4. Delegate the General Manager the authority to source funding up to $1.3 million to complete the project. 5. Delegate the General Manager the authority to sign variations to the contract in accordance with the requirements of the contract and within the approved budget to assist the project completion. And 6, rescind resolution 27-160419 that relates to the extension of the library using council funds to complete. And that refers to a resolution of 2018, I think it was, 2019. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Can we put that in parts, Mr. Mayor, please? 6 parts?
We can, but they're all linked.
Some of them are linked, some of them
Well,
require amendment.
Let's get the mover and the seconder first. So, Councillor McKibben, you are moving it.
Well, I'm not moving because I think it should be dealt with in 6 parts. Yeah.
And Councillor Trembath. All right, now you can speak.
I can't, as I've put it, I can't amend it. That's why.
Well, we did have a mover and a seconder, so yeah.
Can I have a clarification, Mr. Nick?
Yes.
Before.
Yeah.
Just on point 6, Is that the correct way, or is that following the code of conduct, or rescind the resolution in that manner? Doesn't have to be.
Code of meeting practice. Not
Yeah,
code of conduct.
code of meeting practice, sorry. I would have thought that would have taken a notice of motion for a rescission.
So through the chair, an alteration or rescission on a project, if you were going to do another project, that would encapsulate funding that you've already had utilised for another person, would need to go through this process. So if you go through the first 5, it requires the money that you would have had for the extension to the library. Therefore, that resolution needs to be taken off the books. Can you do that through a rescission or a removal?
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the resolution 27/16/04/19 refers to the 16th of the 4th 19 meeting. We also have another motion on there that hasn't been rescinded after that, which goes back to August 2019, which is the DA for the additions to the library, which is 10.2019, or that's the development application. Sorry.
Yeah,
The resolution is 12/20/08/19, which I would have thought would have been the 20th of August 2019, which is later than this one. And I could find no record of that one ever being rescinded. It says that we approve the whatever option it was on these drawings that were put forward to us to extend the library to the northeastern side. And it was at the ordinary meeting of council on the 20th of August 2019. And that's out of the business paper, and the minutes for that meeting have that resolution that was passed unanimously, votes for Sewage, Gibbons, Capel, Doney, Kellum, Lyon, McCarthy, McKechnie, McKibben. Votes against, nil. It was proposed, I think, by Councillor Kellum and Councillor Capel. I can't find any record of that, but that one being rescinded. I'm aware that it may not have been any action started on it, but I'm not aware of any action being started on it. But still, it must be on the books somewhere. I just couldn't find it, and I did look a little bit.
Research, Councillor McKechnie. We can, if necessary, deal with that by adding, if that is required.
Right, so through the chair, that decision related to a DA, right? A DA doesn't require to be rescinded. The action to commit the funds needs to be required to be rescinded. That's resolution related, that related to a DA, and the DA that we have does not need to be rescinded. You just don't start it. It is the action to commit the funds that we're looking to rescind. Okay.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I was going to raise the same question as Councillor McKechnie in relation to recommendation 6. I can certainly understand that if numbers 1 to 5 are passed, then that previous resolution will need to be rescinded. It's a matter of whether the process of simply moving that off the floor complies with the Code of Meeting Practice. Because clause 17.3 says a resolution passed by the council may not be altered or rescinded except by a motion to that effect of which notice has been given under clause 3.10, which is by submitting a notice of motion prior to the meeting. So that was my query, and I think that's a big part of what Councillor McKechnie is asking about the process.
This is procedural, so let's sort this out right now.
Through the chair, before you start dealing with this, you need a mover and second to enter into the debate. Equally, it is the commitment of funds that we need to deal with. Right, so if I have two resolutions that commit the same thing, the action in itself can't be commenced. You need to either remove one, or if council are of an opinion not to undertake that work, they need to commit to what is currently on the board. That is simply the way to move this thing forward. If it's action twice, staff cannot undertake the project as it sits because you've double committed funds. So you either have to undertake this project that you're seeking to undertake, and if not, sorry, as part of that, if you want to do that, the rescission motion of removing that resolution simply overrides a decision that you've made into another decision that incorporates the hub. You can't double commit funds.
Councillor Trimble?
I'm with it, yes.
This is to go to 5. Take the item
No,
individually.
6, sorry, 6, sorry. Retain it.
Sorry, so you're moving that we
have the recommendations as they are written
individually.
As they are written.
All right, is there a second for that? That's great. You should speak to that.
Why I've moved it is I have to all of the feedback that we've received and listened to everyone here this evening. There's a very a consistent theme that runs through, and that is that what we currently have is basically at capacity. It's not providing what the community wants, and it's across the whole of the community, but there is one group that's missing out, and that's our youth, and they're our future. And this project is for the future. It's not for now, and that's why we need to make that big decision and ensure that we take the grant funding that we've got and take the opportunity that costs are going to rise. Inflation is going to increase, and this is probably our last opportunity to ensure that we get this project through as something for the community of the future and the young children that can't even speak for themselves as yet.
Councillor Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything that Councillor Trimbarth has said. And I know one of the negative side has put forward saying that we shouldn't be borrowing money to make the future generations pay for what we want now. But that's exactly what we're not doing. They're going to be paying for what they're using at the time. We are making a decision for the future, and we all do have to pay, contribute to it. But we're not making them pay for something that we're just using now. The whole idea of it is for the future, and it's certainly be a good thing for our community.
So this is about procedural motion.
I'm speaking about this, Mr. Mayor, and I'm foreshadowing maybe some changes to 2 of the points. But basically, I'm speaking in favour of the motion, apart from maybe some amendments to 2 of the points, 4 and 5.
Anyone else wants to speak on this?
But I'd like to speak in favour of the rest of it.
Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on similar lines to Councillor McKenna. I have some reservations about some of the points, and I'd like to make those comments.
Okay, what we're doing here is, I'll put the motion shortly, and that is simply that we take the recommendations individually. That's all we're doing at the moment. This is a procedural motion.
I'm happy for 1 to 3 to be, and 6 to be consolidated. 4 and 5 I would seek, and it may require some clarification. Depending on the clarification, I then may seek an amendment to 4 and 5.
So Councillor Trembath, you were talking about doing 1 to 6 individually.
Yes.
And the seconder did the same thing. So I'm going to put the procedural motion that we deal with each of the recommendations 1 to 6. Sorry.
No, they sit together.
So you've got a mover and a second to deal with them as one.
I will put an amendment that each of these be considered separately. If I have a second to that, I think Mr. McKechnie was saying.
All right.
That will solve the
I'll put that motion now. All in favour that we deal with the recommendations individually? In favour? Against? Passed. You want your name for it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, you could put that down.
Yeah. Okay, we are now taking recommendation 1. And that is confirm the design 1A, option 6 as the final design option for the hub development. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McKibben, Councillor Trembath. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the inception of the concept for this building, I've obviously been in support of the proposed hub, and in particular the redevelopment of the library, which I think is necessary for the community. And a community of this size has already been alluded to, stated tonight. I was somewhat shocked when the pricing came in, though in my own mind I knew that building costs had got up considerably in the last 12 months. And I did a lot of gnashing, and this also refers to the second point, Mr. Mayor, because I don't think that can be disjointed on this issue, and spent a lot of time considering it and going back to the original design 1A option C, which was approved by the former council after a lot of community consultation, a lot of consideration by council as to what we thought would be the most appropriate building for the community. And as I said, I've spent a lot of time gnashing over the increase in cost of this building and what we should do about that. And I know certain representations may have been made that in relation to the $3 million. However, in the light of the current environment, the light of what benefit this will provide to our community generally, and as has been stated, to the youth, to our community organisations, and I think as has been stated, into the future for all of Oberon people into the future, and in particular our youth, I think we have to proceed with this and that we have to fund it, however we may see fit, the shortfall that is contemplated. Obviously, I have to, again, part of my teeth gnashing over it was also considering another project which will come up to, which is of concern to the council, being the sewer treatment plant and the funding of that project. However, I, like most of us, do not want to hand $3 million back to the state government. I think the design that we've come up with is good, and as I think, as Fran Charge said tonight, if we get the basic fabric of the building, we can fit it out in the future. But to lose this opportunity at this stage, I think would be disastrous for the community. So I fully support moving ahead with this project. However, I do have some reservations indicated on the other issues that we've talked about.
Councillor McKibben, Councillor Trembath.
I think I've made it sort of quite clear that I fully support it and the reasons why we need to go ahead with it and make sure that we have something for our future community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're discussing option 1.1. I support the need for some modifications and some expansion in the library and the function centres around there. And we'll have some grave concerns about costings and also around the use of the TI fund. At this stage there, what's left in the budget is 2.6 million. Take TI contribution, which I believe contributing to this is against the TI fund, because it's not specifically just for the benefit of town residents and ratepayers. And as we've heard from several people tonight, it's the benefit of the whole local government area and community. So I think it doesn't fall in the TI fund criteria at all. So that leaves us with a shortfall of 2.38 million. I think we can have.
Keep going.
No. I wonder what your comments were.
No, I was responding to.
I'd like to know.
Through the chair, I was just trying to clarify what the funding was with the TI fund.
Very good.
Continue, please.
That leaves approximately a shortfall of 2.38 million, or a balance of 2.38 million. Now, with that, there's several options without handing it back. I'm against handing it back too. Nobody likes to hand money back. But so the option of not to have hub at all is not an option in my opinion. But we could extend the library to the north and the east, move the CTC back to the BIC where there's adequate room. That would give more room for the youth activities. We could redesign the new hub and have a complete new building on the old dental facility site. Standalone, I'm sure we could do that for less than $2.38 million. Or we could go with 2.6 million, go an internal loan from the TI fund, which the council will pay back over a 2-year period. Lots of options around that, but I can't go along with borrowing another $1.5 million.
Well,
Sorry,
that's not the question at the moment. This is confirming
Yep.
the design option.
I wasn't the only one that moved off the question. That's why I said at the beginning we're discussing point 1. Thank you.
Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We as councillors are elected to represent and make decisions on behalf of our community. We need to be able to understand the issues and the concerns of all the residents over all the age groups. We as a council can't assume that we represent the interests of all our electors and constituents without fully consulting with them. I've spent several months and most recently over the last 3 weeks intensively gaining input and the opinions of as many people in our community as possible through various means, walking, talking, social media, email lists, other meetings, just random chats, businesses. I've met with some strong, well-debated opposition as well as some strongly debated support. I come across a couple of people that didn't care either way. So I took it upon myself to access and view the library while doing my research. I took in the current design, the practicality, the size, stepped out the block, looked at all the dynamics as best I could. I'd like to thank the community as a whole for its patience, all the people here tonight that have repeated themselves over the last few years and sent letters and gave their time to answer many questions. I'd also like to thank Gary for putting up with all of our questions, as well as Chris Milne, who's answered over and over the same stuff that he keeps getting asked. In saying that, my decision tonight is not one that I've taken lightly. I've done a lot of reading going back years, right back to 2008 to be exact. Now, the community has shown a lot of patience. Some have got a little irate, but mostly they've been patient and understanding while we keep bringing this back before council. Looking at the community's needs currently, as well as the future sustainability and the intergenerational equity that we need to instill, which means we need to look at the past, the present and the future. not just think about the future. In all that, our population, the weather, the climate of our region, and the dynamics that surround the same. The increase in the project's financial costings and the ability of our council to meet those financial obligations. I've made a determination on my decision based on many factors, and council's financial position being one of them. Asset integrity being another. And I would therefore like to say that this project would be beneficial to our community, both now and for the future generations. And it will benefit everyone in all age demographics. So I would like to say that I support the project.
Councillor Watt. You're on mute.
I would also like to support the project. I'm just reading the background information. I've been really impressed by the length of time that the community has been consulted on this. I'm of the view that the community consultation has been exhaustive and appropriate, and so I feel it's up to me to support what I think is the results of that community consultation. I'd also like to thank the speakers, both for and against, for speaking so clearly, so well tonight, and presenting their arguments. But I certainly would like to support the motion and the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a regular user of the library, and I support the concept of the hub. I don't have a problem with the design as currently proposed. What I don't support, what I have a problem with, is having to borrow a substantial amount of money to fund the project. We do have to, on occasions, I recognise, borrow money for essential purposes, but I just can't bring myself to support borrowing money for something that would be nice to have but is not essential. I want to add to what others have said about compliments to staff, and particularly to the project manager, about the care and attention to detail. I've got no complaints about the process that has been gone through. However, with the cost coming out so far above the funds currently available, I can't support going ahead with borrowing money. It's easy to spend money, and it's easy to kick the funding problem down the road and hope it sorts itself out. Our upcoming budget over the next couple of months is likely to be difficult. The rate increase at the moment is limited to 0.7%. And even if we apply for a special variation, it will be limited to 2.1%, and that's still below the level of inflation. And by my rough calculation, taking out this loan is going to add in the order of $115,000 per year to our costs every year for 20 years.
Issue at hand is item 1. I'd like you to stick to that.
Yes, but it's very hard to just address option 1, because item 1 automatically leads to a number of the other recommendations. And
Councillor Tucker, we just voted to do it that way, so let's...
Yes, I understand that, and I'm explaining why I cannot support recommendation 1, because it automatically leads to the others, which will end up with needing to borrow 1.3 million. At our candidates forum, we all saw the complaints about past rate increases and the special rate variation, and I made a commitment, I know others did too, to do everything we can to try to keep rate increases to a minimum, and that is my purpose in opposing this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Councillor McCarthy, you wish to say anything?
I support the hub, but not the design that we have that exceeds the budget that was provided and the scope that was given to our designers. The scope was told to be $3 million. I sat in council and watched the motion go around the room here when the person occupied the chair where Councillor Hayden is. And I remember that person saying to council, if it exceeds $3 million, well, it doesn't go ahead. People have the right to change their mind, but I think now we know the cost, it's very substantial.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy.
Point one. Enough before when I supported the lot.
I support point one, that is confirm the design. I think it's a good design. It has been thoroughly researched. It has been thoroughly engineered, and it has been through the community consultation process on a number of occasions. So I will support that. Now, Councillor McKibben, would you like to write a reply at this point?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so I'm happy for the motion.
I think everyone's been had their say. So I'll put the motion that the council confirm design 1A option 6 as the final design option for the hub redevelopment. All those in favour? Is that a yes, Councillor Watt?
Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble with my video, but yeah, it's a yes.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion is passed 6-3. All right, we now move on to recommendation 2, accept the tender submission 2487.15 from Barbara Proprietary Limited. The value of $3,895,440.31. Mover, Councillor McKibben, seconder, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've touched on price, obviously, when I was talking about recommendation 1. In the current environment where building costs and steel and concrete and everything's going up at an increasing pace, this is obviously the best price that can be obtained, and I think that Central West Project Management has done a good job in their negotiations with BARPA to get us to that value. I have certainly seen a number of projects which I've been involved with where the prices have gone up this magnitude, which I alluded to previously, and prices are not going to come down. They're either going to continue to go up and at best level out. So we accept this tender submission from BARPA, is my view, and we just move ahead with it and get it done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I think they've done a great job at the cost cutting so far. The figure is a much better figure than it was last meeting, and council's financial position is pretty strong at the moment, and I think we should just get it done.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Any other councillors? Any other councillors? All right.
But just as you look at the thing, it fits like that. They all go together. If you're going to eliminate, accept 1 and 2, then you've got to accept the rest. And I took it on board that we split it into 6, but I just can't see that you can operate with split. I'm sorry.
No. Anyone else? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there's been comments in the past that we have to keep it to the 3 million, but I think the presentation that Chris has given us, keeping it to the 3 million doesn't fit the brief that originally was given. So if it's 3 million, then it doesn't fit what was asked to do. So I think we really have to go with the figure we've got here.
Are there any more comments from councillors? What reply?
I will in this case, just following on from what Councillor Graham said. Certainly in my questioning of Chris Milne, it's quite clear that we would not get a project anywhere near what the initial scope that we asked for this community hub for the $3 million. And although a number of us were quite adamant that we didn't want to go over the $3 million, I think circumstances have occurred that have meant that that is not possible. And I certainly asked, is it possible to construct a community hub of a similar design to 1A option 6 for $3 million? And the answer was no. You would not get anywhere near what the original design was. I don't want to misquote Chris Milne, but I think that was the gist of what he said. Therefore, I believe, as Councillor Graham has said, that we really have no option but to go ahead with this cost to get something very close to what we all envisaged we would get when this, remembering this design 1A option 6 went on to public exhibition for a considerable period of time for community comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion that we accept the tender submission 2487.15 from Barker Proprietary Limited to the value of $3,895,440.31. All in favour? Councillor Watt, Hayden, Graham, Trembath, McKibben and Kellam. Against? McKechnie and sorry, McCarthy, I was just, and Tucker. All right, recommendation 3. The recommendation is that the Mayor and the General Manager be authorised to sign contract documents. Mover is Councillor McKibben, seconder, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a formality following on from recommendations 1 and 2. However, it could be flavoured by slightly by changes to 4 and 5, but I'm happy to move this as a formality to get the project going. And the only thing comments I would make is I know we're using a standard form contract, but that we ensure that as we do everything possible to limit the scope for contract variations, CCPs, in accordance with my question of Chris Milne earlier. And we expect this project to come in for the contract sum that we have just approved into, and no more. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Put the motion that the Mayor and General Manager be authorised to sign contract documents. All in favour? Councillor McKibben, Councillor Trembath, Councillor Graham, Councillor Hayden, Councillor Watt and Councillor Kellam. Against? Councillor McKechnie, Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Tucker. Item 4. Recommendation is the council delegates the general manager the authority to source funding for up to 1.3 million to complete the project. I've moved and seconder. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Trembath, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, after a lengthy discussion, I think that would be a good idea, and I'm happy to move that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Trembath.
Yes, I second that. Delegating the authority to the general manager to source those funds.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another clarification and maybe foreshadowing an amendment to this recommendation. We've already had Councillor McKechnie raise the issue as to whether the contribution from the Town Improvement Fund, which I think is envisaged at 220,000, is appropriate. I'm just wondering whether it should read that delegate the general manager the authority to seek funding of up to, and maybe it should be 1.5 million if the TI fund doesn't go into it, question mark, I'm just seeking clarification. And to come back to council for approval of the final funding sources, because I think we need to approve the final funding sources. By delegating to the general manager, that basically means the general manager can decide exactly where it's coming from. Whereas I think for a project where we're especially going to borrow money, or could borrow money, that it really needs the approval of the council for that magnitude of borrowing. Because at the moment, the 1.3 million could be a multitude of sources. So I would seek that the general manager seek authority to seek funding and to propose the means to fund, and I do take cognizance of what Councillor McKechnie said, of up to 1.5 million, and then to come back to council for approval of that recommendation. I don't know what other councillors' views are on that.
Yeah.
But I just would like to know, I would like to have a say in how we fund it. And I think because the whole borrowing thing has been very contentious, that if we have to we have to decide how much we're going to fund by borrowing.
Okay, can you firm up what your
amendment
is?
Delegate to the general manager to propose a number of funding sources up to 1.5 million to complete the project, and to then seek approval from council for the final funding sources. Something like that is how I'm happy for someone to change my wording. There are.
Councillor Hayden, are you happy with that?
Yes.
Is there a problem?
No, I'm just asking if the movement and second are happy with it.
Just a question. If that is the case, how long is this going to take to get to that point? 1.5, and where will the funding? Is it going to be at the next meeting, or are we delaying it further? And does it impact the project starting?
And the question is, can you sign a contract without the funding sources being determined? That's a question I do have in my mind. I realise that that's an issue, but I don't know how you get around that, because I think councillors should have the should approve for funding sources. I don't want to stop the project going ahead or the contracts being signed, because you can't really sign a contract. I think that's what Mr. Milne was grimacing about.
My apologies.
I think I was thinking of that about the same time I looked at him. Yeah, sorry.
Just a comment. We do have a finance committee meeting next week. Maybe it could be on that agenda for approval, if time permits.
I'll defer to the general manager, because I'm not going to be the one trying to find it.
Through the chair, that gives me 1 day to find the funding sources. Like the provision, Councillor Kibben has hit the nail on the head in terms of any delay to this limits your opportunity to sign contracts with a preferred tenderer, and that's something that I would be cognizant to not provide council.
Could I suggest that the delegate to the general manager authority to source interim funding up to 1.3 million to complete the project, noting that final funding will be approved by council. The final approval of the sources of funding will be approved by council. That allows you to find the interim funding. If we then want to change the mix, we have the approval to do that. Are you happy with that?
Through the chair, I'll defer to the project bench. I have no issue, but in the interim, that would be get a loan from my perspective.
Yeah.
So, and then look at, no, it'd be a commercial loan.
In the end, But initially, the intermediate funding could be an internal loan through council. And then when the commercial loan is approved, it's repaid to council.
Through the chair, can I please have a look at that and bring that, and at least bring
Just
that back
throw it
to.
out.
Look, I understand, but we also have to look at it across the current budget that we have and where's that going to be sourced from. So it's not just a matter of taking $1.3 million out of an approved operation plan, because that then means, well, what 1.3 aren't you going to do for the remaining 3 months of your operation plan? So that's why I asked, can I please take that day to potentially ask that question? But it certainly restricts other avenues.
Well, then Councillor Trembath has got a hand up for you.
Can we go back to the original point 3? Point 4 at 1.3, and of course we're quibbling over $200,000, which is going to potentially delay a project and lose the timber potentially, because it's already been extended and it's $200,000. It's very small in the scheme of things of what we're trying to achieve here.
I don't think we're quibbling over the 200,000, 220,000. It's where it's coming from is the point. It's coming from the town improvement project. This is not a town improvement project. And the people without curb and guttering, the people without footpaths, they contributed to the town improvement through their rates. They mightn't go to the library, or they mightn't have kids who go to the hub. They might have, but the people that live outside the town boundaries don't contribute to the town improvement projects. So maybe we should apply that levy in this new age sensitive environment, apply that levy right across the local government area.
Well, I'd just like to point out that $200,000 was approved by council.
It was, yeah, and I was one of them.
And that's why it's in there.
I know what that, but I'm saying now that the same as people said, if it goes over 3 million, we're not going for it. I have a right to change my mind too. So I'm changing my mind where the 220,000 comes from. The same as, several people around the room have now changed their mind about going over 300,000. There's arguments for and against. Okay, we've noted that out. We're going ahead. So we still haven't decided what we're going to do with the town improvement contribution, because I don't think it belongs in there. And that's just my opinion, but I'm entitled to. There's plenty of other people in the community who have the same opinion.
If we're going to be specific, maybe what we should say is delegate the general manager the authority to seek loan funding up to 1.3 million, because that's basically what you're going to do. And that puts it on the record that we are borrowing. So I'm happy to add the word loan funding.
But 1.3, not 1.5.
I think we need to be explicit.
Okay, so we've now got a motion that says something else. Hang on, I'm just going to check what the motion says.
At the moment, I have that council delegate to the general manager the authority to source loan funding up to 1.3 million, noting the final funding be presented to council for their endorsement.
No, delete all that. Just it should go back to the original wording. Delegate to the general manager the authority to seek loan funding up to 1.3 million to complete the project.
Easy, thank you, council.
Which is the original.
Plus adding the
Plus the
word.
word line.
Yeah.
So just through the chair, that takes away any opportunity to source funding from other places.
Well, from grants, etc.
Potential future grants, like the.
All right, I'm happy to take the word loan out, but I
we're working our way back to the original.
We are, okay.
Original.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to just talk briefly about the TI fund contribution of 220,000. I thank Councillor McKechnie, because that's an issue I was going to raise as well. I agree that it's not appropriate for that to come from the TI fund, because this is a facility to provide services for the whole community. It's not primarily enhancing the town, it's a service for everyone. So I would like to incorporate somehow that we review whether that is appropriate and give council the opportunity to alter that 220,000 either to take it from the general fund rather than the TI fund, or to treat it as an internal loan so that it is repaid from the general fund back to the TI fund at a later date. So I'm not sure how to incorporate that, but that's what I would like to see, that we get an opportunity to review that at some point. Thank you.
Councillor Tucker. I would remind councillors that the common is funded through the TI fund, and it provides benefit to the entire community, not just the people who live in town. So the way I read that amendment is we're back to what the original was. So therefore, I'm going to put that the recommendation as it stands, that we delegate to the General Manager the authority to source funding up to 1.3 million to complete the project. All those in favour? Councillor Watt, McKibben, Trembath, Graham and Hayden and Callum. Against? McKechnie, McCarthy and Tucker. Right, so that's number 4 passed. Number 5, delegate to the General Manager the authority to sign variations to the contract in accordance with the requirements of the contract and within the approved budget to assist the project to completion. Do I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Trembath. Councillor Graham. Councillor Trembath.
I have no problem with this delegation to the General Manager. That is his role. It's a very straightforward tender and contract that we've been presented with. We've been across all of the contingencies that have been built in, and I think there really isn't a question about it. That's what we have a General Manager for, so let him do his job.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The fact that it's got that authority within the approved budget, I don't think there's a great problem there.
Councillor McKibben.
Just wanted to confirm the approved budget, is that the 3895,440.31? It is. Okay, because looking on page 20 of the attachment A, you go down the budget there, looking at consultants. I thought we were actually paying up at 2.654,290. And then all these other costs came up to 348,490. Then we had the committed as well on top of that, do we? I believe, or not?
Sorry. Can you?
Sure.
Chris, can you excuse?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor McKibben. The approved budget, if I can draw your attention to page 20, the approved budget at this stage, the time that these papers were drawn up, was 3.484990. The addition of $1.3 million or $1.5 million will adjust the budget to a new approved budget of $4.784990. So that includes, and that breakup includes the uncommitted funds was the notional amount that had been allocated for the contractor and the works to be undertaken in kind by council. The other costs for authorities costs, sundry costs, which includes fit out of the building, FF&E and so forth, and the $210,000 worth of contingency builds up to that overall approved budget. And may I? So yes. Whilst there that we're entering into a contract with Barbara at the 2.8, the number 3895440. There is an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, if we can make savings and identify contingencies that can be released, there are opportunities to make variations to that amount for additional scope, such as tiling the bathrooms, as I mentioned earlier. So the approved budget that would be notionally in there would be based on 1.3 million, 4.784990. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that so that when we're looking back at this in a year's time, we actually could we put the approved budget figure into there so there's no misunderstanding? Because, as I said, otherwise there could be a misunderstanding. I'm quite happy if we put within the approved budget of 4.784990 million. Because otherwise I can see some issues arising in 12 months' time when someone looks back at these board papers and says, what was the approved budget? Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
So within the approved budget brackets, what's the figure again?
4.784990 million.
Right. Sharon? You happy with the amendment?
I'm happy with you.
Secondly, you happy?
Yes, I'm happy.
Okay. I'll incorporate that amendment and we will, is there any other comments from any councillors? I put the motion that we delegate the general manager the authority to sign variations to the contract in accordance with the requirements of the contract and within the approved budget to assist the approved budget of 4.784990 million to assist the project to completion. All those in favour? Councillor McKibben, Trembath, McCarthy, Graham, and Hayden, Councillor Watt, and Councillor Cullen. Against? Councillor McKechnie and Councillor Tucker. All right, that leaves the final item, number 6, to rescind the resolution 27-1604-19 that relates to the extension of the library using council funds to complete. The mover in a second, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
I think the resolution speaks for itself, Mr. Mayor. Any further comment on it?
Any other councillors?
Yes,
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm just repeating the point I made earlier that I understand why that is necessary after the previous 5 resolutions. I just can't see that it fits in with our code of meeting practice. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, I can't understand myself why this addition to the library didn't go ahead. It never come to the council briefing session. And then all of a sudden it got a matter of urgency on the night that we had to approve it. And here it is, it never got actioned. So I can't understand how it got to that stage from our staff point of view, when it had to be actioned.
Yes.
He's not talking to the motion.
Agreed. So are you against the rescission of this particular item?
I'm after some information.
Through the chair from memory, and I could take it on notice and report back to council, but soon after that decision was made, the state government offered council $3 million to undertake the hub, which is the exact reason why no action ever occurred on that development.
Anyone else?
Through the chair, if the word rescind isn't something that councillors want to see, insert another word there that removes the double resolution off your books, and council staff will move on with the process. It means the same thing.
Mover and second, are you happy with the rescind or do you want another word? All right.
I'm happy with it.
Through the chair, there is a report that's highlighted the reasons behind it, which gives value for it to undertake, from my opinion, to undertake the wording as it is, but happy to have it removed if councillors are of the opinion that it causes some level of angst.
Any councillors wish to speak to that? All right, I'll put the motion then, and that is the recommendation is that council rescind resolution 27-16-0419 that relates to the extension of the library using council funds to complete. All those in favour? McKibben, Trimbath, Graham, Hayden, Watt and Callum, and against? Techney, McCarthy and Tucker. The motion is passed. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all aspects of the recommendations for item 1301, the community hub design and construction appointment have been passed. Being 7:30 now, or close to, I'm just going to call a 5-minute break so the council can refresh themselves. And I assume you're all staying for the rest of the meeting.
Sorry. Have another.
You're missing the good bit.
Must be good to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance.
This meeting is being recorded.
Just to advise all councillors, the general manager has received a phone call that the inquiries are down at the library. There is a smell, burning smell coming from the roof space apparently. So he's gone to have a look at that. And so we'll continue without him. Hopefully not very long. All right, item 8. Item 8, confirmation of minutes. Recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 15th of March 2022 be confirmed. Moving to second, Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
No, there's a correct record as far as I'm concerned of the previous meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, they are true and correct. I went through every page.
Any other comments, observations? I'll put the motion. Sorry, Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one minor correction. On page 2, which is the list of agenda items, item 10.01 is named as Road Audit Steering Committee, and it should be the Noonans Hill Road culvert. Thank you. That was all.
Thank you. Mike,
yes, I agree with that change.
We'll make that. We'll make that.
Sorry, we didn't pick that up.
Minor change, and that'll be reflected in the signed minutes. Mayoral minute and report. I'll move it. I don't need to second it. Any comments? Given.
I was interested, if I could, on page 9, 4th item down, the Tony Bosworth from the editor of the Hawkesbury Post regarding the article Mountain Tunnel, which appeared in the Oberon Review. Obviously, an issue close to my heart. So, what? So they're in full support of a tunnel right under the mountains, are they?
No, I had a unsolicited phone call from Tony Bosworth, and what he wanted to know, he was focusing on, was the fact that I had made a statement about the fact that the state government had abandoned the strategic planning area by getting rid of the
road reserve,
the road reserves down around Currajong, and he wanted to explore that a bit more. I haven't heard anything back from him since I had that that telephone call, or seen anything that's come of it.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, on about another 5 or 6 articles down, the invitation to join the mayoral roundtable with when is that likely to occur?
It occurred,
or has it occurred?
And I was actually off doing some other thing at the time. It got the conflict of my priorities, so I missed out on it, unfortunately.
But you've had feedback from it.
You had feedback from it?
No, you have had feedback from it.
No, not good. Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question on page 9 on the second last item. Uluru Dialogue inviting council to provide a direct response to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. So I'm just curious as to if that's inviting council as a whole, what the intention is. Will something come to council for any of us who wish to make comment, or how will we go about that?
I'll forward that particular document around, and you can see what it entails.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, page 8 and page 9, 14th of March, there's a letter of response from Paul Toole. It concerns me, and I was just wondering whether there's any possibility of raring this at the next visit from our local member when he comes to council, because this will be Peter paying Paul. In other words, if this asset sold, and our general manager told us it's only operational ground, so it has no building permit. And then we've got to look for another site for the Norway shed. And when I spoke to Mick Holland today, we could be looking at 400,000 for a now a shed with the rising costs. So this is just yeah. So we need to speak to our local member when he next
turns up. I agree.
Thank you.
Any more comments? No. I'll put the recommendation of the report to be received as information. All in favour? Unanimous. Councillor and delegate reports. Black Springs Community Association delegates report. The recommendations of council note the delegates update from the March Black Springs Community Association meeting. Mover, Councillor Hayden, seconder. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, the report entailed a few discussions about what was discussed at the meeting in regards to grant funding that was applied for and granted. Hosted the classic car rally on April 1st. Planning and organisation for the luncheon was discussed during that period of time, and it all went off well on April 1st. And yes, I'm happy to move the motion.
Thanks for that. The only thing I query is that it talks about a report attached to it, and there's no report attached to it. I know I'm seconding it. But I'm happy to second it.
Yep.
But there is nothing attached.
That's not my fault.
I think the delegates report is
I did send it.
It's basically paraphrased in the.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about comments.
But yes, it is an oversight.
Yeah.
And right. Yes. I think. Any more comments about this particular report? I put the motion that it be accepted as for information. Yeah, the council note the delegates update to the March Black Springs Community Association. All in favour? Item 1102, the Central West Joint Organisation Board Roundtable Meeting with Federal Ministers, 31st of March 2022 in Canberra. Recommendation to Council note the report from the roundtable meeting of the Central New South Wales Joint Organisation Board held at Parliament House, Canberra on the 31st of March 2022. Move and second, please. Councillor Gibbon, Councillor Carter. Councillor Gibbon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A very thorough report, and I was pleased to see, obviously, on page 14, 9 key messages for the federal government leading into the election. That were put up by the Central to the federal government. Yeah, So I think it, and I note all the funding. I won't say announcement because most of them have been announced previously, but the summary of all the funding that has been allocated, I call it, is interesting too. So thank you, yes, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for obviously representing us in a high position in that organisation as the Deputy Chair.
Councillor Carlton.
Pretty straightforward, thank you.
I'll just add a couple of comments.
Yeah.
The National Party members who spoke to us were very much focused on the budget and what was in it for rural and regional areas. A bit less on what might happen in the next few years. Now, we also had time with what was called the duty senator from the Labor Party and also one of the MHRs. They were actually quite willing to listen to what our particular challenges were, and most of the things we put up were basically those 9 key messages, and they were quite well across those issues, which was pleasing to see. At least they've done that. Okay, I'll put the recommendation that the report be noted from the roundtable meeting of the Central New South Wales Human Organisation. All in favour? Yes. Country Mayors Association meeting, 5th of November 2021. I missed that. I think that's meant to be 11th of March 22. So, item 1103, the Country Mayors Association meeting on 11th of March 2022. The report item 1102 be received and noted. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Trembath and Councillor Shivens. Councillor Trembath.
It's a good report, and I'm so glad that you're part of that. I did note the focus and priority for closing the gap between health services and, in particular, the water supply, very important issues for us in that's one of the smaller councils. So, yes.
Yes, I'd endorse Councillor Trembath's comments, and I'd also ask, could you give us a little bit more enlightenment on the bottom of page 17 about the biodiversity offset scheme? Obviously, CMA is expressing concerns to the New South Wales government on the biodiversity offset scheme, and that you're inviting the Minister for Environment and Heritage to be invited to attend the future meeting. Can you give some background on that? Sorry.
The biodiversity offset scheme is for any development over a certain level, you have to pay a sum of money to offset
your carbon
footprint and your biodiversity footprint. The concern with the country mayors is that it's a blunt instrument, and it is, and it puts enormous initial costs on projects. So something like Wayangwell Dam, I think the biodiversity offsets are, as the ambit claim, is somewhere in the hundreds of millions.
I do remember that, and we put a letter in.
Yeah. Now, I have had a conversation which is a bit more positive since then, that once you start drilling down into the ambit claim for the biodiversity offsets, a lot of it disappears, but it needs someone who knows the way around the legislation and someone who has a very nimble mind. So I think there's, instead of being this big a problem, it's probably that big a problem. That's not to say that it's not substantial, but I think this is one of these things that's developing, and there will be a equilibrium reached, I think, within 6 months or so about how it's going to operate and what the effects are going to be.
Is it likely to impact on their sewage treatment plant?
I have no opinion on that yet, because we're not actually increasing our footprint a great deal, but it may. And
we are increasing our capacity of output.
Yes, that's what we're also increasing the quality of the output.
So hopefully not. Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't answer it
No, it was just when I saw it, it raised a bit of a red flag.
It's certainly an involving issue.
Thank you.
And one that's got people's attention. Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point I only just noticed now is the recommendation should refer to item 1103, not 1102.
Well spotted, Councillor Tucker. Thank you. Any other comments? Motion, all in favour? Against? No. All right, item 1201, committee reports, Oberon Youth Council. Recommendations that council receive report item 1201 as information. Do I have a mover and a second, please? Councillor Trimbath, Councillor Graham. Councillor Trimbath.
Yeah, great report from the Youth Council. As we heard, they have a very keen interest in the hub and having a safe space so that they can run the events, because it's very telling that they don't really have anywhere at all. And they're also very keen on the proposed training partnership with the Office for Regional Youth. And they particularly like that idea because that will allow them to upskill and get jobs around town, as well as ongoing for their longer term employment.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think looking at that, the training is proposed for July for holidays. So that would be a great time. It couldn't fit into Youth Week. No, too soon. But looking at the next holidays, they're still looking for venues for some of it though. Yes. Yes.
Can council help with that process?
Possibly. That would be good. Yes.
We've got.
They've been knocked back on the number of school. That's out of the question.
What about halls? We've got a ton of them.
Things like coffee making, they need a coffee machine.
That's sort of, yeah.
Well, I'm sure you will help them out.
We will help them.
Councillor.
Oh, look, I would just like to applaud what's occurring with the Youth Council. And I'd also like to say what professional presentation we had tonight from Annabelle Burgess. And I think that should be known. I think she showed that she was a great presenter and obviously I would assume represents the Youth Council remarkably well.
Can you note the minutes, please, Sharon, that Council commends the performance of Annabelle Burgess this evening, and shows the quality of the individuals involved. Leadership, yeah. All right, I'll put the motion that the report be received as information. In favour? Passed. Walking outside. All right. The declaration, item 1302, is a declaration of Oberon LGA as a fossicking district. The recommendation is that is recommended to place the proposal on public exhibition for 28 days to gather community input before a report be considered by council, including any submissions from the public. We'll have a mover in a second. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden.
Thanks about, look, I had some reservations about this originally, but when I looked into it, I now understand what it envisages. I think we need to ensure that when it's put on presentation, that it's indicated to the community that it does override, of the two crucial areas, it does override the existing mineral leases. And number two is that those seeking to access properties have to get the consent of the owners. I think that's crucial. The two crucial elements that will be of interest to our community, especially landholders. But on that basis, and as long as that is the basis for it, I have no problems with it and I support it.
Yes, I support this recommendation. We are a fostering area. We have a lot of areas that people visit now and a lot more areas that people can visit in the future. And as long as there is some clarification regarding some of those mineral leases on private properties, I think that this should go on exhibition, yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I had it drawn to me that if there's a possible, well, it's not extinct, but a thing under threat, like a green frog in some of this area. With this legislation, then won't be able to go there possibly. That was drawn to my attention, but anyway.
I have no idea on that issue.
Yeah, well, apparently one of them is the one out at Chain Pond. So apparently some green frogs been identified out there, and this won't allow the fossing to proceed that's been done in the past. So it's been drawn to my attention even. So sign the times.
Anyone else? I'll put the motion that the proposal on be put on public exhibition for 28 days to gather community input before a report be considered by council, including any submissions from the public. Passed. Item 1303, policy review, payment of expenses and provision of facilities to councillors. And the recommendation is that council place the draft policy 1103, payment of expenses and provision of facilities to councillors on a public exhibition from Thursday 21 April 2022 to Thursday 19th May 2022, and submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policies will be adopted as presented. Lord Mover, the seconder, Councillor Trimbath, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Trimbath.
Yeah, went through it. The only real change there is that allowing us to have a laptop. So yes, put it on display for the time.
Just procedural.
Yes. All right. Councillor McKibben.
Just a matter of clarification. I realise the general manager is not here. I assume that this does not preclude a council making a submission on this, because I don't mind going on an exhibition. I just think in relation to I'll make the comment now, page 88, that there should be some flexibility in relation to where the change is made in relation to ICT expenses, where a councillor does not require a laptop, that maybe the Home Office expenses in that instance could be increased somewhat.
You're perfectly entitled to make a submission.
So I'm prepared to make a submission on that. That would be my only suggestion. Not head up on that, but as a number of councils haven't taken up the offer of a laptop, so those laptops are able to be assigned to members of staff, as I understand it. So,
and I think one of the other issues that is currently under consideration is the ability to host the council portal on your own laptop, and there are some cybersecurity issues that need to be worked through, but I think that that's been discussed by
yeah, well, we're all looking very much forward to the portal, and I think we received our board papers via the portal this time correctly, but I don't think we have access. Well, I certainly don't think I have access outside that, do we? No. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll put the recommendation. All in favour? Against? Review is passed on the commissions. Item 1304, Oberon Street Cook Park footpath awning upgrade and extension. The recommendation is that council defer any commitment and consider the project as part of the 2022-23 operational plan deliberations within the town improvement allocation to a value of $140,000. Council consult with the adjoining landowner to seek comment on the proposed development. Will I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McKibben, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McGilvray.
Thank you. I mean, this awning has been an issue for some time, and to actually do it in concert with the existing structure and the refurbishment of it that goes into Cook Park, I think seems a reasonable proposal, and obviously creates some economies of scale. And I think it should be considered in the 2022-23 operational plan. Probably not a point for consideration at the moment is I query whether we need translucent material because it tends to degenerate at a much higher rate than say colour bond or similar is needed over the whole area, or what areas, because I am concerned that knowing the stuff I know I've got some shearing sheds and it deteriorates quite quickly sometimes, especially with the changes in temperature we have in this environment. But I leave that to the engineering department to consider whether we need the translucent or as much translucent as proposed. But I'm very happy that we look as though we can move ahead with a solution, and there is a solution, and we obviously have to consult with the adjoining landholder, and this time we hope it's approved by him. So very happy to go ahead with that.
Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm happy to see this project go ahead. I know procedure we've got to consult with the adjoining landholder, but that premises is not heritage listed, so making your decision, be aware that it's not heritage listed.
All right, I'll put the recommendation. All in favour? Unanimous? Yeah, I'm going to take that. And the general manager has now returned, and apparently was some fluoros that were causing the issue in the library.
Interesting what occurred tonight.
I think we should move on immediately.
I'll tell you what I said later.
All right, item 1305, Apex Park Exeloo toilet amenity replacement. The recommendation is that council reserve the existing 21-22 town improvement allocation of $70,000. Consider an additional $90,000 part of the deliberations of the 2022-23 operational plan with specific reference to the 2022-23 town improvement fund to construct a new toilet, demolish the existing toilet block, and reconstruct a new accessible Exeloo toilet facility at the same location in Apex Park, Oberon. Mover in a second, please. Councillor Trembath.
Is that the right word?
Councillor Trembath, do we have a seconder? Councillor McKibben. Councillor Trembath.
It's an important piece of infrastructure that we clearly need, and we should be wasting money on something that's obviously outdated and costs a lot more money to maintain. So I agree with the recommendation, and just go ahead and do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I was a little bit of aghast at the extra cost required in recommendation, second part of the recommendation. But having read it, it probably means that if we're going to preserve a toilet at Apex Park, we've got no option but to do this. I suppose the question is how much we need a toilet at Apex Park. So I think the two alternatives are we demolish and don't have one there, or we go ahead with this from what has been indicated from the consultant's report. So I'm happy to, obviously, if we allocate this, probably at a future time could decide if in doing our 22-23 operational plan that we don't have sufficient budget to do this, we could defer it, or we could decide not to go ahead with it.
Councillor Trembath.
many names tonight. What is the actual problem with the current toilets that are at the facility? Because I have used them myself travelling. Why do we need to demolish that building and put another toilet in, a smelly one?
Yeah, through the chair, it's basically a building that is of a vintage that is non-compliant with the Building Code of Australia. So for accessibility and the like, it does receive a lot of use from passing travellers, no doubt. And as the report as outlines, it just says, you know, trying to obtain quotations has been hard. Look, that's only a viewpoint, you know, for council's consideration. But at the end of the day, new modern facilities in other council areas certainly are taking the same sort of approach as these XELU type systems, and they are soft cleansing. Do have a lot of different functionality, whereas in that particular facility at the minute doesn't have you know, needle facilities or disposal facilities and or baby change tables and those types of features. So it's really something for council's consideration at the end of the day to do a modification to the existing unit and try upgrade it to a reasonable standard. Is still going to be what it's going to be. So it's not going to be compliant with the Building Code of Australia per se for accessibility. Sorry.
Like wheelchair access.
Correct. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Mr. Mayor, as I think I recall, we asked that the council staff look at just retiling the walls. We thought that the floor, we asked the councillors that were interested in the project, go and have a look. The floor seems considerably all right. This is a large amount of money, $158,000 that you take out that you haven't got. I'm sure to retile both cubicles, remember we have 2 toilets there at the moment, you're only going to have 1. But I thought the original action was when we had the budget before, that the council have a look at just retiling the walls, bring them up to scratch. As for compliant with the Building Code of Australia, they only have to comply with the time that they were built. If you go down the Building Code of Australia, go down to the new one at the skate park, where we're told we had to have that flip-flop handle for the basin. Go and have a look what's there now. It's not flip-flop handle, it's gone. So this building code and all the rest of it's a load of rubbish. What we need is an operational toilet, which we got. We need to refurbish it so it can be cleaned by our people, that our staff can clean it. We don't need a new toilet. We've got 2 there at the moment. And I'm not against these Excel toilets, but I think we should be looking at what the cost is. And I thought we made a decision, the council staff actually tile it.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A query on the wording of recommendations 2 and 3. In number 3, we're deciding to demolish the existing toilet block, but in number 2, we're only going to consider the additional funding to build a new one. And really, number 3 is dependent on if we do decide to allocate the funding in number 2, and whether we just need to alter the wording to make sure that we only demolish it if we decide to go ahead with number 2.
To the amendment is proposed.
Through the chair, I completely agree, which is why I scribbled down some words, same words, Oberon, comma, should it be approved through that allocation, if that.
Mover and second happy with those words
Yes.
being added?
Point of clarification, if I could, from the Technical Services Director through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor. If we were to get a tiler in to retile the facility, I note in certain instances where you amend the building or make modifications to it, it then causes the impact of the building code to apply to it because you're making those changes to it. That would not, if we were merely to tile it, as Councillor McCarthy has made the comment about, would that then mean that we have to bring up to current building code standards, or is that not considered an amendment significant enough to cause that to occur. It might be the Director of Planning that answers this.
Through the Mayor. Councillor McGibbon, that's correct. If it's only just cosmetic changes, you wouldn't require an upgrade for accessibility requirements under the building code.
So we could investigate just getting the tiler in to do some work, or council. We don't know what that's going to cost.
Through the Mayor, at this stage, no. Look, I don't have any specifics on tiling per se, other than painting bases. There was talk about a total refurb inside those particular toilets, if I recall correctly. But I've not struck any interest at this stage. I will look further afield if that's what council's intent or would like to do in terms of a refurb.
Well, I think I proposed a second of the resolution recommendation, so I can't propose an amendment to carry out further investigation.
May I propose the amendment? Now I propose the amendment that council look at. Help me out here, Andrew.
Council look at some alternatives to refurbishing the current facilities that do not require, do not constitute a modification that would require bringing the full facility up to a building code of Australia, and that could be, as envisaged, that could just be retiling the current facility. Subject to that, I think, then if that's not acceptable, then we have to look at 1, 2, and 3. Is that what you said, Helen?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe words were something along the line of cosmetic only, not requiring a change to the DCA.
Yeah, cosmetic.
Can I just incorporate something like that into
Cosmetic
it?
upgrade.
So through the chair, just for clarification, I think the existing 21-22 town improvement allocation of 70 was to do exactly that. I think originally there was a proposal to have this facility redone, and council resolved just to do a minor upgrade. Just noting in the report that it has had one builder have a look at it, may have indicated an issue with it. That doesn't say that we don't get further reports, but I just note that there was some issue with getting local contractors to in fact have a look at that within the funding allocation allowed. We'll continue to do that for sure, but if there's an opportunity to bring that back to a 22-23 deliberation, we can certainly outline further investigations that we've done to support either or of the options.
I think, Mr. Jetner, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's what Councillor Hayden was thinking. I don't think she was saying that 1, 2, and 3 should be 2 and 3 should be subverted, but there should be further investigation for tiling to see what that would come back with, and then if we couldn't, then in the future we may consider upgrading, but we had to consider that option first.
So what I'm suggesting is we have the opportunity to bring that back to you very quickly if you want to go down that path.
And maybe we just need a tile and not a complete build up.
Thanks.
So what's our technique?
Yeah, just in the comments, I don't think it needs to be $160,000 job. I think 70,000 that we've allocated for it is probably sufficient to bring it up to a respectable, usable standard. The builder that's looked at it, he's basing his comments on the fact of the age of it, but the layout of the toilet is not user-friendly or accessibly compliant for users. Well, it doesn't have to be. It's not a disability or an ambulant toilet. And there's also 2 toilets there, male and a female. We're eliminating one. It does get assume it gets used a lot. You see people using the park regularly, travellers. So I'd be in favour of keeping the two there and actually getting, you know, Trial City or somebody to have a look at it, because it actually probably only needs tiling and tidying up with some paint and a bit of vandal proofing, a couple of pieces in there, and I think you'd be done. I've just done en-suites and bathrooms at home, completely renovated for less than $70,000, and I think actually an exorbitant amount of money, $160,000. Ridiculous.
I was just about to,
Councillor Trimble?
yeah, I was just about to say potentially, you know, spending $70,000 and getting something to do it, the cost of doing bathrooms. You should get 2 bathrooms here with tiling and paint. You probably are going to be up to this sort of money. I know it doesn't sound like that's possible, but I don't know if you've ever done building and renovations that usually does, or you know what, you're there. So you'd have to get it quoted. But
yeah, you'd have to get the price. Yeah. We're not putting through all that.
But our home standard versus a public toilet that needs to meet some standards, there will be some requirements around it.
So through the chair, like, I mean, it has a lot more modification, you know, modernisation, self-cleansing, cleansing, lockable door, using unisex. I'm certainly not here to try sell it either way, but I think that, you know, certain point taken in terms of a refurb versus then the building code of Australia is compliant. So it's really that option there for the council for consideration.
Okay, now Councillor Hayden has moved a amendment. Do you have a seconder? Was there a seconder?
Second. Okay.
Councillor Graham? So do you wish to speak to the amendment?
I think, yes, I think that would be a better option to refurbish than there would be other alternatives. Building of a new excellent
Councillor Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree. I think it's a very expensive change to the toilet facilities that may not be warranted at this stage.
Any other comments? Or
I know I spoke in favour of the amendment, but I support the amendment. I think we have a number of cost pressures on council at the moment in other areas. One we've discussed today, and we have another large one probably coming up, not too distant future, which we're moving ahead with. So I think we do have to be a bit prudent in this area. I think as Councillor Hayden has said, that we should look at other alternatives and try and keep it within the 70s. We all realise that it will not be building code compliant, but on the other hand, there are 2 toilets there now, and we're only going to get 1 afterwards. Even if we could get 5 to 10 years out of 5 years out of it, 6 years out of it, it'll at least allow in future for something like an XL loo to go ahead. But I think we have to be careful about dollars in a lot of areas at the moment.
Sorry.
Yeah, just if I could ask Councillor Graham a question that might be relevant.
Yeah.
The golf club, I believe you're on the committee up there. They've just got a grant to put an accessible toilet on the course. And I don't recall the exact amount, but I'm pretty sure it's not $160,000.
No, 63.
Yeah.
But it's a pump out.
Yeah.
It's not the same sort of thing. And it won't clean itself.
No, but you know, we're not looking.
Yeah.
We're not looking at something that will clean itself either. But if we can, there are other. The point I'm trying to make is there are other options out there without going for the Rolls Royce of moves.
All right, before I put this amendment, the General Manager's got a bit of information from our website about the Disability Inclusion Action Plan.
Through the chair, my only comment is that as part of council's approved processes, there is a thing called our Disability Inclusion Action Plan. And the requirements of it, without going into the whole document, and I'll leave it to you guys to have a look at, that is to deal with and set out strategies and actions that council will deliver to enable people with a disability to have greater access to council information, services and facilities. Now, it's only provided for you at this point in time for information, but when the commentary is made around, oh, why do we have to upgrade it and why are we doing these types of things, there is documentation and policy around the reason why we do these things. But I note it, and if you don't need to do that, then you don't, as been indicated. All I'm trying to put in is the strategy and the reasoning behind it.
Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah. Like I said before, I thought the council made an agreement that we just went along the thing of toilet and put new toilets in. I remember saying in council to the councils that are concerned, go and view it, that it's not, even the floors up to scratch pretty well. There is a large area to the side, which probably complied with the disabled toilet because I think it's been built in the area when it started to come in. So I think there's been some consideration for disabled, but to spend this amount of money and have two toilets there that only need retiling and refurbishing, and then you end up with one toilet for this extra money is not quite right.
All right, I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? Sorry, Councillor Tucker, you were in favour?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
You're on a very small screen at the moment, and Councillor Watt, you're in favour? Okay. All right, so the amendment now becomes the motion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Unanimous. Motion is, as the amendment, sorry, the motion is now passed. Right, moving on to reports of information. Item 1401, so monthly activity report for the General Manager. And the recommendation is the report be received as information. Move in a second, please. Councillor McCarthy, Councillor McKechnie. Councillor McCarthy.
It's pretty straightforward. My only comment is, are we recruiting outdoor staff as well as indoor staff? We seem to have positions in indoor staff, and we're filling them pretty routine, but haven't we got a fair few outdoor staff positions that we haven't filled?
So through the chair, yeah, we're moving on a strategy to do that as well. Under our workforce management plans, we have a process that we want to promote from within, and where there's those opportunities to improve, that has been rather successful lately. With that becomes problematic, where the fact that you then have that job that you've just promoted from then becomes available, which will look at those labourer type positions where other people have moved into. So yeah, we're working on a strategy to do that as we speak.
Well, I understand we've had some of that movement up there. We're still down here. We haven't finished the void, fill the void, and it's restricting our duties to carry out our.
So through the chair, under our, once again, our workforce management plan, to promote from within, you also have to work with and support your staff. And in some occasions where staff have moved into a position that they didn't or couldn't or was over the top of what, we still need to protect their existing position so we don't lose that quality of staff in our organisation. So yes, there is some delay, but as I said, we're trying to put strategies together to deal with that as we speak.
Do we ever consider putting people on that haven't got all the range that we ultimately like to have, but they've got some range of skills and they're willing to train up? That's, I understand that some people applied for jobs in the past. They only had limited skills, but were prepared to train up, i.e. paddle pop tickets and all that. And we're told they didn't have them in the position required them now.
Anyway.
through the chair, we'll always look at having people trained in that way. Would be silly not to.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor McKibben? Was making you the best, Councillor McKechnie.
No, I've got nothing to add.
Councillor McKibben.
I was just going to, if I could, page 125 under general HR matters. So the review of the waste services staffing is dependent on consultants' report on the facilities at the waste centre. I thought the facilities at the waste centre had been determined what they were going to be.
Yep.
So why are we waiting on the consultants?
Sorry, there are a majority of those things have been dealt with. The pound is one that we're still hasn't been resolved in finality. So there are some things there. The consultant's report relates to the need and want for positions that we already have within the structure. So they're already there. We're just awaiting some further information on other jobs that would link back to that job.
So is that
separate that?
So as I understood, the pound was going out there. Is that still the case, or is there some ambiguity in that area?
Through the chair, there is still some hesitation around that. Proximity to town, there's some existing land that we may be able to use. The fact that the SCP hasn't started at this point in time has meant that it could be delayed for that little bit longer. There are some unknowns that are still out there that we need to consider.
So does that mean we will have to build, if we do locate it to another site, we'd have to build another building? Because this building was designed to deal with staff managing the pound and the waste centre, as I understand it, or recall.
Through the chair, that is correct. That may be the case. That will be a decision for council to consider in the near future.
Okay, because I thought the co-location of the pound at the waste had been decided and was definitive. It's now no longer definitive.
The issues around the pound at the tip has some distinct advantages.
And I've heard some disadvantages for
and that's why there is still some uncertainty around that. That's why it hasn't been.
I understand some of the staff weren't completely happy about it, but that might.
Through the chair, I understand the rationale behind even dropping dogs, cats at that facility that's out of town, maybe a
disincentive.
Correct. Great word.
That's what
to be able to do that. Now, it will be a decision for council to do that in a consultative process. So that's why I make the comment that it hasn't been finalised.
I thank the General Manager for clarifying that, because I wasn't aware that it was still a little bit up in the air at this stage, but I had heard rumours, and I think for all councillors that's been informative, I have to say. I note there's not going into the area, but I note that there has been a number of discussions on a confidential matter. Do we have any indication when that confidential matter may be brought to an end? I think I can ask that.
There is a number of confidential matters that are progressing as we speak.
I think there's one human resources.
I'd hope that those matters come to conclusion reasonably quickly, but they are in progress.
So we'd imagine they'd be resolved by June.
I would hope that they're resolved sooner than that, but that doesn't necessarily work that way.
I think what you might is it progressing?
It's progressing. It's absolutely progressing.
Yeah, it will be brought to finality at some stage, and we hope not in the too distant future. On another, I presume, confidential matter, which involved some actions taken by a landholder on the 6-foot track.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That's one of them I take it. Has that been resolved? Because I thought Moray and Agnew were representing us in that one, and I just wanted to understand if that been resolved, completely resolved now.
Through the chair, that is another matter. But on the 6 foot track, that has been resolved with council being successful in that situation.
All right. Are the other matters likely to be discussed in a confidential nature with council at any stage? If you note, there are a number of confidential matters.
There's 4 confidential matters that we'll be dealing with tonight, councillor, but there are a briefing will be provided to council in the near future.
At the next meeting?
In the near future. Not necessarily in a council meeting, but an update or 2 councils will be provided in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. And could I ask, 2/3 of the way down page 127, there was what's an H&B inspection?
It's a health and building inspection.
Oh, health and building inspection. Okay, right. Thank you.
Through the chair, the beauty of having one health and building officer down, but the general manager with qualifications is that sometimes you got to get back on the tools.
All right, well, that clarifies it. I'm happy. That's my final question.
Councillor Hayes?
Thank you. Back to this, and then I'd just like to bring up something that Councillor McKibben had touched on with the pound. There's a lot of new regulations that are currently coming out, and there's a whole new big report, and we're going to be very careful what we build, where we build it, and how we dispose of any companion animals from this day forward.
Right.
Through the chair, it's from 2021 forward, which is another reason why the development hasn't been finalised. Let's go with that.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. That helps again to clarify this.
Any further questions, comments? All right, I'll move the report 1401 is received information. All in favour? That's item.
Thank you.
1402. Activity report for planning and development. Recommendation is that report item 1402 is received as information. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor McKibben, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, an informative report. I suppose there have been a large number of determinations indicated on page 129 and the top of 130 during March. But also, and I hope that this is going to be resolved with the appointment of the new planner, but obviously there are a lot of applications that have been lodged, sort of stretching back to December last year, that are still in train. Have not been, and I realise the resources constraints that the planning department is under. And as I said, I hope that's resolved with the recent appointment. Maybe through you, Mr. Chairman, if the Director of Technical Services could just give us an update on how he, sorry, thank you, Director of Planning, could please give us an update on how he believes that the table will be reduced and in what time frame. The time frame's reduced, and obviously I understand the resourcing issues.
Through the chair, Councillor Gibbon, as previously advised at other meetings, with the new planner coming on board, we're also keeping the contractors for a period of time to again try and reduce the numbers down. I've been going through the list that you're talking about and reviewing some of the dates. Whilst we have been short of staff, some of the dates have not been updated, probably as diligent as perhaps they could be. So I am trying to, with this now the assistance of the new staff member, trying to get through that list and update that so it is, I don't want to say more accurate, but
truly reflective of the situation.
Correct. Thank you. How that answers your question.
Thank you.
I rang Damien and asked him for an update on the sports complex DA. I spoke to the general manager tonight, but I'm very disappointed that here we have this we've engaged these consultants and all the rest, and we can't get it approved.
Yeah. So through the chair, as I've indicated, we are liaising with our consultant now to have that expedited. If they can't do it, we'll go somewhere else to get them to do it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, is what I'm getting at is if you engage someone that's supposed to know what they're doing, it should get a rubber stamp.
Well, I don't expect to get a rubber stamp. I expect to get a thorough analysis of the development and come up with an answer. They should be doing that, yes.
This is not the overall development. This is currently the road in. So what I'm getting at is that if you go off to someone that's supposed to know what they're doing and we can't get it approved, there's something wrong in the system.
Yeah, I agree.
It's here we are, the 4th month. This is last year. It's still not done. So anyway, thank you.
Oh no, look, I raised it with the general manager, and I will raise it later. That I think the status of council resolutions, this should be updated. I commented with the general manager, acknowledging it hadn't been updated properly, so I might. I'll leave it at that. Okay.
Any further? All right, put the recommendation of 1402 as received as information. Favour? Against? Nil. Passed. 1403. Okay, activity of technical services. Recommendations that 1403 is received as information. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's been a lot of community comment about the upgrades of all our roads, Burriga Road in particular, Campbell's River Road, Nunzills Road, etc. And the comments have all been excellent. So thank you very much, Director of Technical Services. And I just want to make a point that although the timing of the Burriga Road upgrade had nothing to do with my wedding, it was alleged that as the Deputy Mayor I'd arranged it to be done just prior to my wedding, but I assumed that I could only thank the Technical Services Director, but I can assure everyone there was no pressure on the Technical Services Director. That's why I didn't declare it as a declaration of interest.
He was the best man at your wedding.
But no, thank you. I think a lot of work, and obviously with the recent improved weather conditions, that has assisted us with our roadworks. So thank you, Technical Services Director.
Thanks.
I'm more than happy to move the recommendation.
Yes, I'm happy to second this, and I'd just like to thank the Technical Service Director for being patient, especially with a lot of the complaints that have been coming across about the different roads. Humphreys Drive is looking so much better. That's looking fantastic. I've had a lot of community feedback about Lowe's Mount and the sections there, and a lot of other councils as well are actually saying how great that work is, and if some of their councils could take on doing what we do. So thank you to the Technical Services. I do have one bit of an issue with the latest one at the Mayfield intersection. There's been a couple of people giving some feedback onto where the guardrail is situated on that road. I myself turn off that road and use it quite frequently going to Bathurst, and there isn't quite enough room for a truck to go around you or to go around a truck when either one is turning to the right-hand side. Going out and turning left or turning left into there seems to be okay. It just seems that that guardrail is a little too close onto the bitumen and should maybe have been given another metre to the other side. That's okay. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Just one thing, just to say thank you for having the avenue all mown today, ready for Anzac Day in O'Connell.
Pass it on. Thank you.
Well done. Okay, then. Any other Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Great job on the Mayfield intersection. Just can't understand, and I'm a bit with the Armco fence. I'd like the Works Committee to visit the site. On the northern side, they've done a great job of procuring in the roadway. But if the Armco fence was back another metre, it actually gives you a lot more safer distance when someone's pulled up to go down to Mayfield, that you can actually slip by, where at the moment, I think you've only got 3 metres. And if you've got a moving car, 3 metres isn't very wide. But if we could have a look on our Works Committee meeting, go out and have a look, but maybe there's statutory requirements that you've got to have so much compacted fill behind it. But if you go and have a look, it just seems that the Armco fence could go further. That's my concern there. And on Lowe's Mount, there's a terrific job being done out there on that first 6 kilometres. But are we going to refurbish the driveways to the ones that was already sealed? Like Peter Hanron's at 445, I think, Lowe's Mount, it was sealed, but it hasn't been resealed. And Mrs. Grady's at further along, it hasn't been resealed back to the ring.
Yeah, through the chair, just to comment or clarify on that particular issue, the contractor, Fulton Hogan, did run short of emulsion when they were here. They are coming back here on Thursday, the 21st, weather pending, which is predicted to be fine, and actually finish those in conjunction with some other sealing work. That also is inclusive of Humphreys Drive. You'll note that the driveways haven't been finalised there either, but that's the very reason why they haven't moved.
Okay, thank you. No, it just seems that when Fulton Hogan get to the stage and then there's a hiccup. Anyway, thank you.
All right, any more? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Move on to 1404. Month activity report, corporate services, and recommendation is 1404 is received as information. And I just remind everyone that Matt Webb is no longer on Zoom. He's hopefully embedded. So the general manager will be answering any questions on the subject. Mover and second, please. Councillor McKibben, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McKibben.
No, Mr. Mayor, I have no comments on the report. I think it's a very thorough report. So explains where we are with the TI, etc., and everything else. So I'm quite happy with it as it stands.
Councillor McCarthy.
Well, I'm happy with the report. So let Matt Staines in bed.
I can wake him up.
I'll put the recommendation. There's no other questions. In favour? Against? Unanimous. 1405. The recommendations of council received report 1405 for information. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor McKibben and Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, it shows a slight increase in our interest rates that we're obtaining on our latter invested funds, which is good to see. However, it's still modest, to say the least, and that's where we stand with our investments, earning not particularly much. So I'm happy to recommend the report.
Yes, it's a thorough report, and it's as good as we're going to get in this economic climate. So we should be thanking our lucky stars that we're getting a little bit of interest back.
Any other comments? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Moving on to 1406, the grants monthly update, and the report item 1406 is received information. Mover and seconder. Left-hand side of the room, maybe. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Grant. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, it's a good report. Nice to see that the grants are coming in, federal grants for building better regions, and I'm sure that the projects that are in the pipeline and the projects that are undergoing work at the moment. We're doing well through this. I'd like to see more grant applications going, of course, as we all do. But yeah, I'm happy to move the report.
Councillor Graham?
Yeah, it's interesting to see the time lag when you apply and when you eventually get the money. It takes a long time, doesn't it?
It's a challenge.
Councillor McGood?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was good to see on page 149, 3/4 of the way down, that the variation request was approved. The variation of the funding deed so that we can use some of the O'Connell funds for the proposed toilet block, etc. That was great to see for the amenities and storage building. Again, as Councillor Graham said, it's to see that the assessment of applications is taking sort of 12 weeks, so 2.3 million under the Building Better Regions Fund R6. We would expect, I think we said June, July. Yeah. The other interesting fact is on page 150-51 is that we are likely to be allocated, or will be allocated, I think is what it says, $584,514, which we have the option of using for social infrastructure or roads. And I'm assuming we as a council will have to determine which way we go. And from what my reading of this, the 584,514 could be allocated to the library upgrade and to the hub, or it could be allocated to the sporting complex. Or it could be obviously go to roads. So we'll have an interesting discussion in relation to that item. We have 3 areas we desperately need the money, and 3 areas, you know, we have to decide. We have to decide on one.
Can it be split?
Or we cannot be split, yes. Yeah. Or we split it. So I assume that comes, if I could, to the May meeting, does it, for determination?
Well, we've got to get the money first.
Yeah.
Right, but I understood that. I'm reading this. It almost says it's a carte blanche. We get it or not?
Well,
or is it subject to the election?
It depends on the election.
Oh, it does depend on the election.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it does.
So, in your discussions with the federal opposition at the Centroc, were you able to get their commitment to this thing?
We actually got advice of that figure.
Yeah.
In about the last hour we were sitting in that room. So it was.
Did the federal opposition nod their head and say, if we're in government, we'll keep that commitment? Oh.
No.
I see more.
So
at a minimum would have been good.
Noting that, you know, it's a federal budget, grant opportunities, and the opposition has said that they will bring down their own budget.
Okay.
Now, I would not expect things like this to get short shrift, but then again, who knows?
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. Mayor and Mr. General.
Okay, anything else from the grants? For the recommendation that received as information. All in favour? Unanimous. 1407 water and sewer plant report. The item recommendation of the item 1407 is received as information. Move for a second, please. Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy.
Pretty straightforward report. Only question I have to the engineer is, we have telemetry now on all these remote sewage plants, don't we? So there's no need for daily inspections, is that correct?
Through the chair, yeah, certainly do have telemetry on all the sewage pumping stations, and yes, there is continuing monitoring that is required on those pump stations, just for faults and or cleaning, systematic cleaning of the actual shelves. Sometimes they can become blocked and require that additional help for maintenance.
So is that daily then?
Through the chair, no, it's not necessarily daily. I'll inspect it probably twice weekly.
Okay. Just someone made the comment, you can set the watch by council vehicle going to those particular locations.
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, it's a good report, and it will be really good when our contractors arrive on the 26th, start their work on the 27th to clear some of the water issues with the dirty water. And yeah, it's something that's been at the heart of the community for quite some time, and let's hope that we can finally eradicate the issue, get it fixed and sorted. So thank you for the report. Yes.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, also just a question on the ongoing dirty water issues. I'm assuming that it's mostly manganese that causes the problem. I have heard mentions of iron. I don't know if there's anything else, but just concentrating on the manganese issue. I'm wondering, do we actually have measurements of the manganese levels of the raw water entering the plant? And do we also take levels of the manganese level leaving the plant? And if so, does the difference between those levels, is it in accordance with what we would expect from the capacity of the plant to treat it?
Through the chair, yeah, certainly we do take recordings of the raw water. We do share those recordings with Water New South Wales, actually as a comparison, which is good data to have. Yes, the operators do also measure the outgoing manganese levels, and it does fluctuate, and there has been certainly some significant differences in terms of water quality incoming, particularly, which does have that impact on the outgoing, also with the contact time for potassium permanganate to obviously strip out the metal content. So yes, to both manganese primarily, but yes, there is iron level issues also.
So at those times, when the raw water manganese levels are high, I'm taking it from that response that that there are times when the treatment plant is not able to remove all of the manganese, and some of it gets through into the reticulation system, and I'm guessing that is one of the significant factors in the ongoing issues. And the reason I ask it is that if that is the case, then simply cleaning the mains, it'll have a temporary effect. But if we're just replacing that dirty water and putting more dirty water into the system, then we can expect the manganese levels to build up again over time.
Through the chair, look, that analogy is not incorrect per se. It does take a fair period of time for it to build back in the inner linings of pipes. Of course, yes, you're right. The problem will not go away ultimately, and yes, it's not unique to Oberon either. All councils do generally strip their the film or biofilm out of inside pipes, whether it be manganese or whatever type that be. So yeah, it's systematic and routine. I think like changing motor oil in a vehicle to longevity of your engine, isn't it? So you're right in what you're saying.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'd just like to have a question to technical services executive as well. I was doing some research over the weekend, and I'm just wondering whether you can clarify, do we have an automated system whereby the potassium permanganate is added for the manganese levels? Now, are we measuring the data between the potassium permanganate and the issues, the reaction with the chlorine, and then the reaction with those with the fluoride? Because under 25-degree temperatures, they can actually have very severe reactions under the atmospheric pressure.
Yeah, through the chair, certainly the levels have been taken in the laboratory, measurements consistent with the differing variable levels.
So we're doing that with other such?
Yeah, consistent then with the dosing and to what level we can dose to before we actually could turn or tip the water to a different colour. Potassium permanganate, sorry. My pardon. So yeah, look, we do take all those measures, how scientific to atmospheric pressure. I just can't comment on that. But
it was just a new finding that was found under 25-degree temperatures and the atmospheric pressure at the time.
So there are, I mean, obviously environmental impacts that can, from cold climate to even warmer weather, have those certain turning points that do have an effect.
Because I did notice using the app and then going in and getting the data sheets from Water New South Wales that our biochemical oxygen demand is higher than it usually is, and then our the solids in the water are much higher than they were in previous months. Very high.
I'll take that on notice. You know, certainly a lot of elements, and then you know, that particular component with your raw water. So yeah.
Okay, any others? I'll put the motion that report 1407 is received as information. All in favour? Against? No. 1408. Might be updated status of council resolutions. Recommendations of 1408 is received as information. Councillor McKibben and Councillor Trimbar. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Detailed report, if I could just make a couple of comments. Page 156 in relation to the Oberon Waste Depot. I understand, obviously there's going to be a report provided to the Works Committee next week, but have we, I understood that the trial of the telehandler is currently occurring. Has that been successful or not at this stage?
Through the chair, as I mentioned in my update report, the telehandler has been, we've engaged through the hire company. We're just waiting on the delivery of that.
Oh, you haven't got it yet, right? And I think you said you had troubles getting a front end loader, was it?
Correct.
Yeah. I think I might have suggested to you, there are a number of people in town with one. I know Drake's have got one. He might rent one out for you if you wanted to trial it, but that's off the record. I don't know. Peter Dwyer. I know he has one because I've used his on my property, so I know he's got one. But if we want to compare the difference between the telehandler and loader, that might be the way to do it. I've made comments in relation to the second row on 158 about, I think that just needs updating to say that it's with our traffic consultant. The consultant hasn't provided the report allowing the JRPP to finalise the report.
Yes.
This matter's dealt with later. On page 161, the item 14.15.0222, has that work now been undertaken? I can't remember if that was in the Technical Services Director's report. On the road that I can never pronounce. Fogger. Sorry, 161, second road down.
It hasn't, it says wet weather.
Yeah, but now it'll be undertaken during April.
Yeah, through the mayor, that work is in progress. Former Ratsep surveying, quotation have been engaged to undertake that work, so they were delayed. Property owner's been notified, so that should be done, if not already, probably surveyed, waiting for that design to come back to council.
Okay, fine. I understood that there may have been an issue with one of the debt collection or payment plans for rates, and I'm not sure which one of those it was, whether it was private, yeah. Do you remember which one it was, and has that been now fixed? I can't remember which one of these it is.
The matter is being resolved.
Okay, which one of these is it? And maybe we just need to put a comment there that there was some further discussions with the landholder and it has been resolved.
At the time of writing the report, that hadn't been resolved.
Okay, right.
It has been resolved.
All right, thank you. we had, sorry, sale of, this is on page 166, going over to 167. So it's obviously the last row on 166 extends into the top row of 167. Has that progressed at all?
Through the chair, my understanding is they're meeting tomorrow. However, we have had a number of conversations with the prospective buyer to give to let him know what those concerns are, and they're meeting tomorrow with an understanding to get some information from him and also provide information to him.
Right. So any idea when that's likely to crystallise, or to use that term?
Through the chair, that would be then in his hands to get that information back to us for us to progress it.
Okay. All right. Okay, maybe or maybe if a comment could be made for the May report, just giving us an update on that. It can be in general terms, but yes, back in the applicant's hands to provide further information or something. The council has provided the information requested.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation this report be accepted.
So, I do like reading this report, seeing how much work we managed to refresh myself. But I have a question, page 160. This is to do with the O'Connell Hotel. Now, currently, this was where we to investigate the retention and relocation of the phone booth. The hotel is fully closed. It has fencing all around it. There's no DA, so I'm just wondering if the priority on this should be very high at all.
Through the chair, it's reluctant of me to say that one resolution has any priority over the other. They're all as important as each other. I'll take it on notice to see whether we have written or we've given that any further action, but from that, it basically says it's in progress regarding that item, so it's outstanding. So it has been.
Just bring to attention that there's been nothing other than to close down.
Unfortunately, that's not what the resolution says, Councillor.
The other thing, page 163, it's just about the O'Connell background. A detailed statement report to be provided prior to the April 2 meeting. That's 3 last point.
Reporting back to May.
Okay. I get questions, so I'll just make sure that I feed that back.
Yeah.
No, other than that, that's just my questions, and thank you very much for the report.
Any other comments or questions? Motion the report be received as information. All in favour? Unanimous. Item 1409, guidelines for additional special rate special variation process 2022-23. Recommendations report item 1409 is received as information. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Hayden, Councillor Tibbett. Councillor Hayden. I saw you first. I have bifocal, not million eyes.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, this report, I'm happy to move this report. This is something that we've got to take some serious consideration into. We've got to look at our CSP as well as looking at this, because we need to make sure that council are doing things that are going to be financially correct.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think as Councillor Hayden said that this will take a lot of consideration at our Finance Committee meeting where we're considering it next week, the 26th of April. And obviously we will take full cognizance of the information provided by council staff, the major decision for us all. Thank you for providing the guidelines and some indications to what other councils are doing as well. It's been interesting to see in our surrounding areas, but we all know that, as I think it's been indicated by Councillor Tucker as well tonight, that there is some rate stress within our community, but we also have to make sure that we properly account for our future requirements and the requirements moving forward. So we have to weigh both of these competing interests up when coming to a determination on this matter. And that's all I think I should say at this stage, and I'm very happy to second this recommendation.
Other comments? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of brief points. I did send an email to the director and the GM because I wasn't clear about what it actually meant between either a temporary or a permanent variation, because I thought either way it was just for 1 year, and how that would work if it was described as a permanent variation. So I have received a reply. I didn't understand the reply, so that might be a point for further discussion next week. My main question, though, is just about the timing. If council is of a mind to apply for a variation over and above the 0.7%, I was expecting that we would have to make that decision today, because if it just goes to the Finance Committee, doesn't that then have to come back to next month's full council meeting, or is there a delegation to the Finance Committee?
Through the chair, the Finance Committee is a committee of the whole and has delegation to approve on the spot. So it doesn't have to come.
Righto, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Motion that 1409 is received with information. All in favour? Unanimous. Move into any urgent business? No. Nothing in urgent business. I need to move into confidential.
Happy to move the meeting into confidential.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my business page for it here. There we go. All right. According to the Local Government Act 1993 and the Local Government General Regulations 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 110A2 of the Act, and should be dealt with in a part of the meeting closed to the media and the public. I'd like to thank the members of the public for joining us this evening and say good night. I will now ask Council to move us into closed circuit. The closed Council, Councillor McKibben, Councillor McKechnie. Sorry? I request that the Secretary now turn off recordings at 9:02 p.m.
This meeting is being recorded.
Now ask Council to move and second the resolution to move back to open session. Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Trenbar. During the closed session, the following resolutions were made. 1601, line marking services entering into contracts. The Council accepts and sign contracts with Avante line marking, Central West line marking, Complete line marking, and Oz line marking for line marking services, and advise the Central New South Wales joint organisation of its decision. Item 1602, tender T2022/2, supply and delivery of road-based material. That council accept both tender submissions, T2022/2 from Oberon Earth Moving Proprietary Limited and Oberon Quarries for the provision of supply and delivery of road-based material for a period of 24 months, commencing on the 1st of May 2022. And the General Manager be authorised to sign contract documents. Item 1603, residential land development. That council nominate the open tendering method as prescribed in accordance with clause 166B of the Local Government Regulation 2005, seeking interest in the development of residential land, and upon completion of the mandatory 21-day tender period, assessment by a panel will provide a further report to council for consideration and determination. Item 1604, industrial land developments. The council nominate the open tendering method as prescribed in accordance with clause 166B of the Local Government Regulation 2005, seeking interest in the development of stage 2 of the Oberon Industrial Estate. Upon completion of the mandatory 21-day tender period, assessment by a panel will provide a further report to council for consideration and determination, and revise the selling price per square metre rate as delegated to the GM in the mayoral memo. The next ordinary meeting of Oberon Council will be held on Tuesday, the 17th of May, 2022, commencing at 5:30 in the Oberon Council Chambers at 137 to 139 Oberon Street, Oberon. I now declare the meeting closed at 9:45 PM and wish everyone a good evening. Stop recording.